Welcome to Bad Dice, the UK's first Warhammer Fantasy Battle podcast. We bring you news, reviews and updates from all around the UK tournament scene. Your hosts are Ben Curry and Ben Johnson. We hope you enjoy the show, and if you do, be sure to let us know. You can contact us on thebens@baddice.co.uk or leave a positive review on iTunes. Welcome to episode 40 of the Bad Dice podcast. And in this episode, we've got quite a special treat, haven't we, Ben?
We have. We've got a very special guest, Mr. Gav Thorpe.
Yeah, so Gav's coming in. He's going to chat to us about all things Games Workshop, Black Library, and much, much more, hopefully. So we're going to have a quick rundown of our sponsors, then we're going to launch straight into the interview. There's not a lot of point doing Week in Warhammer and the news, because we're on a weekly format now, so we're going to do that every other week, I think. So, sponsors, Ben. Odd Games.
Odd Games, yes. Independent stockists of all things gaming, most notably Games Workshop, where you can get 15% off. And you can also get the Warhammer Rulebook, 8th edition, for £37.50.
Yeah, it's quite cheap, isn't it? I think there's postage on top of that, so it comes in at 39 quid. But it's still cheap.
Can't grumble at that, can you? A 2.5 kilo book delivered to your door for 39 quid.
I mean, someone emailed me and says, I know you've shouted out for your sponsors and all that, but I spotted one even cheaper on the net elsewhere, and they sent me the link, and once I looked at it, it was 7 quid for delivery. So it was, Odd Games, 39 quid for Warhammer. You can't grumble. And if you are in the local
Clapham area, isn't it?
Clapham, Wandsworth, anywhere in London, any of the gaming clubs, I'm sure, Ollie will deliver it to you by hand, so you get to see the delightful Ollie as well, for £37.50.
No, I don't know how many listeners have met Ollie, but he's a very thin man. This could break him.
It could break him. How's he going to carry all these books to all these events and tournaments and all that sort of thing? Anyway, so Odd Games, check them out. It's oddgames.co.uk, and by no means is it og-games.co.uk. Don't go there. It's bad things lie that way.
Why? What happens then?
You'll have to have a look. But oddgames.co.uk, check them out. So our next sponsor, Ben?
Unseen Lurker magazine.
Unseen Lurker, yeah. Bi-monthly magazine. That's every other month, and it's all good. Again, it's gaming. It's mainly Warhammer, but they do all sorts of stuff. And we're doing a battle report this weekend using My Wood Elf, so keep an eye out for a future issue with My Wood Elf army. I think it's issue 4, which shouldn't be too long away by all accounts. So, Unseen Lurker, Ben, what do you reckon? You think it's going from strength to strength, or
it's
what?
Definitely getting a lot better, isn't it? From an average start, shall we say? The last one was very good. Yeah,
I'm impressed. I'm pleased to see that they are sticking at it and they are churning out each issue. They're learning stuff. They're putting better stuff into it. So,
well, that's the thing as well. They've got a bit of some of them have got a bit of a background in that kind of thing, but they've really just started from scratch, haven't they? So you've got to expect a bit of a steep curve. Yeah,
so that's unseenlurker.com. Check them out. Buy the magazine. It's all good. And, of course, we've also got Rankings HQ. Check them out. They do the UK rankings, and all countries worldwide are sort of starting to get on there now. Yeah. Massive Flames of War following on there. Massive Warhammer following. 40k on there. Even Privateer Press are going on there soon with the War Machine and the Hordes games by all accounts. So keep an eye out for that. Rankingshq.com. And join the Snake Eyes group. You can join the Snake Eyes Club on Rankings HQ, and the top 10 from the Snake Eyes Club are displayed on the Bad Dice website.
Yes, the little widget thing, isn't there?
Yeah. So,
that club's going to take over the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because there's so many people from so many different countries. We're going to be number one in every country, I think. Hopefully.
Nothing like playing the system.
Yeah, that's it. So that's the sponsors. Forget that there's free shipping to anywhere in the UK with all Odd Games purchases. www.oddgames.co.uk. Okay, so we have with us Gav Thorpe, games developer and author from Games Workshop, Black Library, and now you're freelance.
That's correct, yeah.
You started with Games Workshop in '94 as a staff writer and games developer.
Assistant games developer, yeah.
Okay. Over the next 5 years, you was in that role until you went to senior games developer in 2000.
Yep, sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. So for the next 8 years, he's in charge of numerous projects and contributing to countless more, notably on the Warhammer side, which is what we're interested, to be fair, Warhammer podcast.
Yep, mostly, yep.
We've got co-writer of Warhammer 7th, lead writer of Beasts, Hordes of Chaos, 6th edition Dark Elves, 7th edition Dark Elves, 7th edition Vampire Counts, as well as the annuals.
Crimes, yeah.
The Warhammer annuals, the Storm of Chaos campaign book.
Yeah.
And is there anything else on Warhammer? Have we missed?
Well, I mean, over that period, from 2000, I became the Warhammer Lore Master, which for the next few years meant I was running the Warhammer team.
So it's pretty much everything Warhammer related.
Yeah, yeah. Although, obviously, varied from project to project. I think there's, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but yeah, certainly in recent memory, that's probably about it.
And then we've got the 40k is pretty much everything you've been credited with at some point during that time. And then we've got the Inquisitor game, also lead writer on Inquisitor.
Yep, definitely.
And then during the whole time, you've also, is it 13 Black Library novels?
I think it's 13 now, yeah.
Including the Sundering, which is the most recent works for the Time Legends series.
Yes, yeah, Shadow King's just...
as well as the Mark of Chaos computer game, scripts and voiceovers.
Yeah.
And now you're currently doing, well, a side project away from all that, isn't it? A new project away from the Games Workshop universe, which is the Crown of Blood, Crown of the Conqueror, and Crown of the Usurper series.
Yes, that's right. That's with Angry Robot. Yeah, that's my new fantasy series.
Excellent. So did we miss anything?
No. I mean, there was like, my first writing credit was the Warhammer Quest Pit Fighter pack.
Oh, excellent.
Depending on how far you want to go
Go
back.
on then.
Have you? Yeah, I do remember that.
fun.
So,
Yeah.
to be fair, that was one of the things we wanted to talk about. So, I think we'll start from the start. So, how did you actually get into gaming? Where did it all begin?
Okay. I suppose when I was 9 or 10, I was into toy soldiers, like you are when you're 9 or 10, collecting my Airfix soldiers and stuff like that, and making up games with my friends, playing it on the floor. I've got the thing that really got me into the fantasy gaming side of stuff was I've got a cousin who's a few years older than me, and he was collecting Citadel miniatures, and he had this Warhammer game. So that was sort of the route in there. We played, spent more time actually probably just painting miniatures than we did actually playing. And then I think the first real workshop game I started playing was Adeptus Titanicus and Space Marine, and played that lots, although had sort of lots of Warhammer and 40k figures as well by that point, but that was the one we really collected armies for. And also got into the role-playing side of stuff, so I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and, all sorts of other role-playing
Seems to be everyone's way in, doesn't it?
But yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons.
there's usually a very common story. Yeah, well, my brother and I were bought the Dungeons and Dragons basic set and expert set for Christmas by our grandparents one year when I was about 10, 11, something like that. And then a couple of years later, somebody got Talisman and all that sort of stuff, and it sort of spiralled from there, really. So, and then, and then I think so from pretty much from Adeptus Titanicus onwards, I bought every Games Workshop box game up until Advanced Space Crusade. I didn't buy that one because up until Tyranids Attack because I already owned Advanced Space Crusade. And I thought, hang on, that's the same game.
Yeah.
So that was it. And but yeah, the mainstays during that time were Epic. Played a lot. Got some of my friends interested in Blood Bowl. That's when I first started collecting Eldar, and I had an Empire army for Warhammer over most of that time. Plus, a huge Orc War for my Epic forces. That was great. I had about 6 Gargants, so that was good. Yeah.
So how old was you around this time?
So that was, so I probably started playing around 10, and I joined Games Workshop when I was 19. So
okay, so what was your sort of gaming environment like? Did you play just you and a mate in the bedroom, or did you have gaming clubs, or what?
No, there was. It was just basically me and my mates at the house, getting a board out onto the dining table. Our sort of local Games Workshop was the Luton store, but we'd treat ourselves and head down to London now and again, and we'd do the whole thing. We'd do the games and comics thing. So we'd go to Games Workshop and we'd go to Forbidden Planet and a few other comic shops and Virgin Megastore for our records and stuff. So that was our teenage days out. And yeah, so that was it really. Didn't really game in stores and stuff. It's all very much in-house gaming with a few friends. Losing quite a lot, if I remember, against one particular... My particular gaming buddy is a guy called Danny. He's the one who used to just beat me all the time, but I still enjoyed it for some reason. Must be a masochist.
Yeah, that's it. So how did you actually start at Games Workshop then? From a 19-year-old living in where, Luton, you say?
In Stevenage, in Hertfordshire. So
all of a sudden you're at Games Workshop in Nottingham.
Yeah, it was... it was mostly being in the right place at the right time, really. It was in... I went to Games Day that year, and I'd been working on some rules, and I was sort of writing... Originally, I was planning to be an illustrator, and that's kind of what I did at school, and I did A-level art, and then that sort of... The realisation came that I wasn't really good enough to draw pictures for a living.
The hard truth.
Yeah, or if I wanted to be, I was going to have to put a lot more time and effort into it than I was...
Yeah.
Another 5 years in education, basically. So I thought, no, I think we'll skip that. So I was doing various odd part-time jobs and casual jobs and stuff, and I was writing up some stuff, and I'd written some Blood Bowl rules for quadrupeds. So I wrote Blood Bowl rules for Zotes, basically. And I just took them to Games Day to show to Jervis. I don't know particularly why. I hadn't done it before. I've been to quite a few, but I just thought, I'll just show them to him. And then he lied to me and said that they were working on a new supplement for the game, when actually they were working on the new edition of the game. And to send them to him at the studio, said, yeah, these are quite good, actually, I like these. Send them to me at the studio address, don't give them to me now, I'll lose them. So I thought, okay. That's all right. And I'd had a whole bunch of other stuff I'd written. And so I got my mum's electric typewriter and I typed them all out properly. Well, fairly properly. Yeah. And stuck them in an envelope with a letter saying, well, here's some stuff I've written. Do you want to give me a job emptying the bins or anything like that? Now, at this time was when it was not long after the management buyout of Games Workshop, and they were going through a huge expansion, and that meant the studio as well. So they were hiring for assistant games developers. There were 3 positions for assistant games developers, and I'd seen the advert in White Dwarf for it, and I'd looked at it, and it said, I'll preferably looking for somebody 21 or over, a graduate, blah, and all these things. And I went, well, not me, and I hadn't thought about it again. Now, as it turned out, for details I won't go into here, but they'd filled the 3 positions, but 2 of the guys actually they'd chosen decided not to take up the jobs, and so I just wandered along. I went, yeah, I've written some stuff, and they kind of liked it. So
so pity.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. And actually, the best thing was that I was asked up to Nottingham to have an interview at the studio. So that was it. I talked to Rick for about an hour, showed him bad pictures of my armies and stuff like that, and then I got a tour of the studio, which was just it was just a tour around Pixieland as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And just being just totally amazed and just going, well, it doesn't matter, whatever else, I got that. But, that was on a Friday. They phoned me up on the Monday and said, when can you start? So I started the following Monday.
Excellent.
So that was it.
These 3 guys started at the same time. Who was the other 2 positions?
Well, it was myself, Ian Pickstock and Mark Hawkins. And
okay.
We started the journal, Citadel Journal, together when that was relaunched, and that was kind of our first proper job. Actually, my first proper job was working on pasting up mock-up war gear cards for Dark Millennium. That was the very first thing I did for Games Workshop.
Have you still got some?
I haven't got them now, unfortunately.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
So when you went for your interview and you was all wide-eyed and just amazed by everything, do you think that went some way to helping you get the job, as shown how enthusiastic you were for it, or did that...
It possibly could have been. I mean, it might have been just the case that they thought, well, he's an able body. We've got a spare position, we'll stick him in there. I do remember Jervis and Andy were playing a game of 40k when I came round, and I had a bit of a chat with them, and they were playtesting the first rules for the Elder Falcon. So, and I can't remember precisely what I said, but I pretty much said, it sounds like a really bad idea, because, the whole point of vehicles is they're not very manoeuvrable, but they've got all these advantages, so it must be really hard to balance a flying tank. And they kind of looked at me and went, yep. So that might have swung it for me as well. But yeah, I think they obviously, with the stuff I'd written, I think when anyone wants to kind of become a games developer or do anything like that, it's as much about showing it's something that you do anyway. I mean, I really don't know what I'd do if I hadn't got the job, where my life would have gone, but it was something I was doing already. I didn't write a bunch of stuff and get into sort of writing background and scenarios and doing concept sketches and stuff because it was going to be a job. I did it because I enjoyed it first.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of passion, that just natural affinity for doing that sort of thing, and a vague understanding of how the English language works and how to add up.
That passion obviously came out in your interview and in the work you'd put in already, and that must have been what got the eye.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, it must have. I mean, I turned up with a wad of stuff about 2 inches thick by the end of it, of stuff like that.
Did any of that get used?
A surprising amount, actually. Well, not directly, no. The one thing that kind of got used is that the core concept behind the Tau Society, so the idea of the 5 castes and the sort of like based on the elements and stuff, that was a race. It was actually a lizard man race I'd invented before I joined Games Workshop. Yeah. So they weren't the Tau, and they didn't have the look or anything like that, and they would. The sketch he had done was so heavily influenced by Jezzy's Eldar concept sketches. It was unbelievable. Now I look back, but that core concept of the way their society worked was lifted from that. Actually, I repackaged it when we were looking to do a new race for 40k. I repackaged that along with the ideas that we were having for the Tau and that kind of stock. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So you've already spoke about what your actual first project was, but what was the first one you was like major project you was given the lead on at Games Workshop?
The first supplement I did, I think, was Catacombs of Terror for Warhammer Quest. But the one that kind of will stick in people's minds was the Sisters of Battle Codex.
Okay,
that was basically I spent a year as assistant games developer, and then there was a couple of years as staff writer on White Dwarf, and then I went back to games development. And the first project then was the Sisters of Battle Codex, which was fantastic to work on, actually, because it was
brand new. Yeah,
brand new, and just working with awesome designers and John Blanche and all the mad, kind of ecclesiarchy stuff in the background there. And that was it was odd because I think leading into sort of in my early days of Workshop, actually, I'd been on the Warhammer side of stuff. I kind of gamed equally both before I joined, but I'd kind of taken up I was more of the Warhammer expert amongst the three of us, really. And I did quite a bit of the Warhammer stuff for White Dwarf, while Ian Pickstock did more of the 40k stuff. But around about that same time, Thomas Purinan joined, and so he was taking a lot of the Warhammer stuff, and I ended up working on 40k, and that's just kind of the way it worked out. So I was kind of involved with the Codex Sisters of Battle and doing all of that, and then it was sort of after that we did, I think, 3rd edition 40k. So I ended up sort of going down the 40k route for quite a while, which was good fun, actually. But and then later on, swinging back towards the Warhammer side of stuff when Thomas left. So.
Yeah. So are you a Warhammer guy at heart, or is it just you like them both equally, or how does that work?
I think, given the choice, I prefer playing Warhammer, but I prefer the background of 40k more.
Because it's so rich, there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, I love equal. They're both great to write in and work with and stuff like that. But I like the they've got slightly different appeals, and the spectacle of a Warhammer battle with those big blocks of troops and huge armies and sort of just looks better for me as a war game than sort of scattered squads. Although the individual models and stuff, it's cut down to personal preference. But I just think looking at a Warhammer table gets me more excited than looking at a 40k table. Yeah. But that said, now that you've got things like Stompers and Baneblades wandering around, you go, well, that's pretty cool.
They do look impressive, don't they?
Yeah, but but I think the 40k background's kind of taken a step. It's just got much more, especially the Imperium, just got that sort of madness to it, which is one of the joys of doing sort of Inquisitor and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to choose between the two, but I think, gaming love is Warhammer, sort of writing love is probably 40k.
Right, okay. But then, we'll come back to the layer, because I've got another question on that. I'll get it mixed up with my notes.
That's right.
Okay, so you say the Sisters of Battle was your first major project you were given. This is one of the questions I'd wanted to ask was, how does the process work when you're given a project to work on? Here, that's an army book, particularly with a new book like the Sisters of Battle. How does that process go from day one when it's first put in front of you to release?
And how do they decide that it's you to do it?
Yeah.
Is that just literally you finish one project and the next one's due to start, so it's yours, or?
Well, if it was that simple, it would be great. You're usually working on about 3 or 4 projects at one time, and they at various stages, because essentially as a games developer, you're there from the first kind of meetings and concept stuff right the way through to the post-release support in White Dwarf, which is, anything 18 months to 2 years, sometimes even longer, depending on what the project is. and sort of a bit like the glue that holds the other bits of the process together. So, for a standard, say, army book, that the powers that be, with some input from the developers, you say, well, okay, we've got, say, Beta Chaos coming up, and this is when we want it to be released, and this is when we're going to start. So the first thing is just to identify what the project brief is. Really, it's like what we're going to do with the book, in terms of presenting the background, what we're going to do with the army, and then part of what you want to do with the army, of course, is what we're going to do with the miniatures range, and that's just the thing that really holds the project together, is what miniatures are we making at the end of the day, what we're going to do with plastic, what new character types can we introduce, all that kind of stuff. Once that's been nailed down, which is, can be quite an ongoing process, you then plan out the book itself, so what goes in the army, what goes in the background section, what's going to, and sort of manage that project through. Most of the time, the majority of material in a book will be written by the guy whose name's on the front. So if it says by Gav Thorpe, that probably means, probably 90% of the text in there will have been written by me.
So that's the rules, the background, everything.
And what you tend to do is you do your first early design on the army. Now, if it's something you're revising, then you're deciding how much you're going to change stuff. Sometimes it's a little tweak. Sometimes, obviously, you're going to do a major overhaul. And again, quite a lot of that comes down to how much of the range you can choose, or how many new toys you can introduce into an army, that sort of thing.
So is that based on what models they're planning to remake, or?
Yeah, it's what you're remaking, but also it's important to always try and think what stuff can we add. Now, that can be a very pragmatic decision. Sometimes it's just about what design resource you've got. So, for example, with the Dark Elves, the major thrust of it last time around was the fact that we needed to get lots more stuff done in plastic, because when it was redone just after 6th edition, there was sort of the Warriors box set,
everything.
and they obviously they were just lagging behind the other armies. So it was more a case of turning stuff into plastic rather than branching out and adding loads of new stuff. Whereas the Vampire Counts was very much we really want to overhaul the imagery on this and really push the boat out. So there was a lot more sort of room for adding stuff in if we wanted to, or sort of shifting the way certain images have been used, like the Blood Knights or the Vargulf and things like that. So you just expanded the army. And so that's always the idea, is that you're trying to... So it's always a balance between giving the existing gamers something new, whether it's new background, new army choices, new tactics, or whatever it might be, but also making sure that everything that's gone before isn't forgotten, especially in terms of the background and things like that. It's quite easy to get carried away adding loads of new stuff in, but if somebody picks that book up in the shop and it doesn't tell them, these are the provinces of the Empire, these are the electors, all of that basic information that we all take for granted, then it's not done its job either. And there's sort of, as various policies have sort of come and gone over the design of codexes and army books, a greater lesser extent is placed on those different priorities. So once you've got your basic army design, these are the things in it. This goes in core, this goes in special, this goes in rare. Then that's when you get into nitty gritty of designing the army. And then once you've kind of had a few games of that and you know the overall shapes right, you go, well, actually, yeah, that's kind of working. Obviously it'll need lots of things smoothing out. That's when you start thinking about the background and the art brief and all that kind of stuff. So then you kind of work on the two things in tandem, sort of testing the army and tweaking it, and then writing the background sections as well. And then once you start getting the miniatures in later, and the Heavy Metal team are painting them, so you're working with colour schemes, you're working with the artists about banner designs and shield designs and all that sort of stuff, and you're planning out what information you need to put into the colour section so people know what their uniforms are or whatever all that other information is. And all the way through, again, you're still trying to tweak the army, and some of those things suggest stuff that you can add in the army or magic items or stuff like that, and then eventually an editor pries it off you and you have to leave it alone, and it gets sent away, and then you go, oh good, let's see how much.
So is it often that you come to the end of a project and you still feel that you could have done more with it, or is...
Yeah, I think that's true on any project really. You don't have infinite, it would take ever more time to forever refine. Yeah,
it's like painting an army, isn't it? You never, never
keep adding something.
Yeah,
and then once you're done, you go back and repaint the ones you did first. Yeah, I can see that.
And on getting the printed product back, so when you get the army book back or the rule book back or whatever, you have 15 minutes of perfection. when you look at it and go, oh, look at the pictures, they're lovely and the taste, and then you'll spot the first typo. And then after 50, if you don't, and it'll be, or that picture slightly out of focus, we didn't spot that, or whatever, and then that's it, the perfection's gone, and it's like,
oh no,
that's going to kill us.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but the odd thing is, then usually what a few months after, you're already thinking, okay, what are we going to do next time round? And
as soon as that,
well. Not necessarily on everything, but there's some things, say, for example, again, going back to Dark Elves, because we had a very specific thing for sort of consolidating what we had with the miniatures range and everything else. But, of course, part of that was we did explore ideas, and did we want to do Hydra variants, did we want to do new war machines, what other troop types could we do? So there's all those things that you don't necessarily get into a project, all the stories you had for the background that you didn't have room to fit in, all that kind of stuff. So they're always there in the back burner. And in the same way, I mean, people ask if we take feedback and things like that. Again, it's an ongoing process. You don't just sit down sort of 2 months before you do to write it and then go, all right, let's find out everything what people don't like about Dark Elves. It's something that you accumulate from talking to people at tournaments or games days or, looking at forums, and you see what the general trends are and what people don't like, and then you think about what your solutions are going to be for that. Now, if you're inventing something completely new, say, or doing a large sort of reinvention like we did with the Wood Elves and the Bretonians last time round, then the process is kind of the same, but it takes a bit longer, essentially, because you're pretty much, you look at what you've got, but you're really starting from basics. So it's like, well, okay, what is the army dynamic? How are these going to work? What are the basic mechanics we're going to need? So like the Bretonians is an interesting one because we liked the idea of the lance formation, but in 5th edition it was just a pain. It's putting a triangle in a game designed for squares.
Yeah.
And it just was. And it looked really cool, and that was it. It's like we want to make sure that Bretonian lance looks really cool and looks unique on the Warhammer tabletop compared to all the other knights. And so, and we came up with the idea of just, ranking 3 wide and various other abilities. And it's that sort of thing, you pick 3 or 4 dynamics, you go, this is what the army's going to be about, either visually or the way they play or what their background is, and then you direct your efforts to try and make sure that they come across or they're encapsulated in the rules and the background as much as possible. So, for the Dark Elves, I want them to be a very offensive army. The High Elves and that kind of trade-off with the High Elves being defensive, so that you'd always get these quite bloody battles between the two and things like that. So, and once you've got those settled, then it's just a matter of, tweaking. What you don't want to do is start from just a mechanics basis for an army, because then that can be a bit dull, because everyone, if you just start thinking about it in terms of the actual rules mechanics, you can end up with a bit of an army that does a bit of everything and does all, sort of fills in all the gaps, but doesn't actually really have any theme or character on the tabletop when you're playing it, and plays like other armies. And the more armies there are, the trickier it's going to be.
Yeah.
So
they all can't be completely unique.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all these guys run across the table and hit you. These guys stand back and shoot you. These guys run halfway across and then sort of shoot you. And then once you get beyond that, and do they deserve unique magic? Do they deserve all this kind of stuff? So it's always, and all of this obviously has been informed by that ongoing brief, really, from sort of the higher ups about what well, no, that's not really what Dark Elves are about. They're about this and this and this. Go, okay.
So who is it who would decide that?
Well,
maybe not specific names, but is that at a games development level, or is that is it a financial decision, or is it, I don't know, how does that work?
Well, in terms of the books, there's various people who feed into what the imagery are and stuff. So you've got people like John Blanche, Rick Priestley, Alan Merritt, who's the intellectual property manager, and then you have and in terms of the creative side, I think they're the people with the greatest input, and it's between them and the designers, and same with the miniature designers and artists. They each take their own briefs and conversations, and then after that, then you've basically got a level of management within the studio themselves who really are sort of there to facilitate the communication and sort of run the projects and that kind of stuff, hopefully, I'm supposed to. And allow you to concentrate on sort of fulfilling that brief in a creative sense. But, of course, the good thing and the bad thing about somewhere like the design studio is everyone's a hobbyist and enthusiastic. And so it means, just like hobbyist enthusiasts everywhere, they've all got an opinion.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And so if you happen to be, just redesigning a manager's favourite army, they won't, it's not like they will influence the process, but just as, you guys, I'm sure, would just collar SEO at Games Day or whatever and go, I think Skaven should be like this. Or they're the same. And you have to manage that. You set that expectation.
Skaven are fine. Let's not give them any more.
Yeah,
God.
exactly. So you have all of those sort of things to handle. And it sounds a lot more, it is quite complicated, but once you've done it a few times, you kind of get a hang of it. But the thing is, you're working, just to finish off.
It's fine.
The thing is, because of the time periods are so long, generally you're conceptualizing one project while you're writing probably another one and doing the release support for the one before. So that's kind of the cycle. So you're never doing the same thing on the projects, but there's always some overlap. You don't have the luxury of being able to spend 18 months on one project and then start another one.
No.
You'd need 3 times as many designers, basically.
So how often have you sat down and opened your today's work of, let's do this for the Dark Elves, and you're thinking, something's wrong here, why can't they do this? And it's, oh no, that's right, this army there was doing that. And do you often get them mixed up, or is it...
Sometimes, yeah. Especially when it's as much about trying to keep your head around what the armies the other guys are designing can do.
Yeah.
So, because it's not static necessarily, you're always kind of testing and trying to balance the armies against their current iteration. You can't look too far forward because you don't know. Somebody might have a really cool idea for this really cool dwarf war machine that's going to be made in a couple of years' time. But you can't. But until you have that sort of moment of invention, you can't guess what it's going to be. So there's always a slight sort of rolling process to design and balancing of the game, and even within the projects. So while I might be working on the Dark Elves, somebody else is working on High Elves, and you try and get together, especially with 2 projects like that, which you think should be fairly closely linked.
Yeah.
But somebody might be thinking about the first ideas of what the Skaven are, but by the time I finish the Dark Elves, we don't know quite what the new iteration of the Skaven is going to be in detail. So it may be that the case. So you're kind of looking over your shoulder, you're making sure you don't replicate what people already got, but you can't second guess what they might have in the future. And it is, it can be a bit of a ever diminishing sort of pile of goodies where you go, actually, it'd be cool if you have a war engine that does such and such. You go, no, they've got one of those. How about a spell that? No, that's the same as that one. I've had this magic item that does this. So, which again is why that army dynamic theme idea is so important, so that you go, well, it's not about giving everything to every army. So everyone gets to play with their own sort of toys and have their own style. And then there's less chance of clashing in terms of individual sort of troop types or whatever. So
okay. So how much does the financial side of things influence the actual rules? So let's say a new army was coming out and you were saying, right, we want a new plastic of these. Like you said, the Dark Elves were plastic. Does that mean, okay, these are going to be the new plastic release, make them good in the game, or does that not come about at all?
I don't think you set out to say, let's just make these good in the game. You want to make everything good in the game, but it's about, if you've got something new, then you want to make it exciting.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean overpowered, although sometimes mistakes happen and that's sort of the way it goes. There isn't a deliberate policy of we'll just make the new stuff the coolest ever. And one of the things is you tend to have a bit of there's always a slight element of the pendulum swing on certain troop types or what's, sort of in and out. So that, a troop type that might have been seen as slightly underpowered in previous editions or too expensive, you can sometimes overcompensate.
Yeah.
And it's, that overcompensation can be exacerbated if they've got a cool new plastic set with all these new different options on and stuff, and you go, oh, yeah, that's really cool. And simply they haven't had the test of time, because particularly with new things, because, you can get feedback, say, on Dark Elf Corsairs, as they existed for the 10 years before then, but as soon as you introduce handbows, you go, well, that's a new thing. We won't really know how they shake out for another few years.
There's only so many games you can play test, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. And you try and do as much as possible. And, that's quite a small thing, but, an entire new war machine or a new monster or whatever it might be, the implications, I say, especially as you've got this continually evolving sort of development, you might not see for a few years, and that's one that you start, again, you add to that mental list again, okay, we'll tone that back down, or they need sort of pulling up.
Does that mean that next time the Dark Elves get done, the Hydra is going to be rubbish?
well, yeah. The Hydra is one of the... Yeah, okay. Well, there was a few editorial changes made to the High Elves just as I was
Dark Elves.
leaving. Dark Elves, sorry. Just as I was leaving. So I'm not getting into details, but not all of it was my fault.
Oh, okay. Pass the book on that one. Okay, so I've got another question sort of along them lines. So the last two Warhammer armies you did with the vampires and the Dark Elves,
yep.
and then they came out, demons were in between the two of them. Was that, for us as the tournament players, that sort of, there was a massive power leap in them three armies.
Pushed it up.
And to be fair, they were sort of on par with the three of them, and what you've said sort of ties in with that of you constantly looking at what's coming, are you matched to this? Was that a conscious decision to bring the latest range? Because it was all within 1 year, wasn't it? Was it the 25 years as well? It was 1 year, there was like 4 releases that year, and then three armies particularly stepped forward the power of the game quite a bit. Was that a conscious decision, or was that just a byproduct of cool new stuff all coming out at the same time?
A bit of both. There wasn't a conscious decision, or certainly not with the vampires, and I've no idea because I wasn't involved in the briefing for the demons. With the Dark Elves, clearly they were a bit bland and they were a bit underpowered in the previous book that I wrote. And so I was very determined that I was going to make it a really characterful, exciting army. And the way, as it's turned out, the way I wanted to do it, and I think the way good army design works is that you create those synergies in the army where it's all about the sum of the parts. And it's got, I say, one or two things aside, a couple of items that maybe needed testing a bit more and were changed at the last minute and stuff. The Dark Elves have that feel to them. They're all about the sum of the parts and being very effective. And I wanted them to be really effective but fragile and that sort of thing. The vampires, I think there's, again, the only... I wanted the magic system to kind of hark back to the old necromancy system where we had 4th and 5th edition with the recast and the spells and things like that. And when you've got something that's as important to an army as a focal point, so with undead it's, these big shambling blocks that cause fear and they're very dependent on their magic. It's a very fine line you have to balance stuff on. And again, with the vampires, if anything, it's... there's still lots of options within the list, but with any army, if people want to pare them down to their most efficient kind of troops choices and kind of tactics and stuff, there'll always be something they can find. They'll throw out half the army list anyway and go, "Oh, that's not worth it."
Skeletons,
or whatever they decide is going to be, the least efficient, because they have to make those choices as part of that sort of that style of gaming is to make to do as much as possible with as few variables as possible. It's all about the predictability and stuff. And that's the other thing about the undead is, because of the psychology rules and because of the way their magic works and stuff, they're quite predictable. Take the opposite, orcs and goblins, very unpredictable and that sort of thing, and not necessarily the all-conquering tournament winners that they are. And it's interesting. They can be.
Is it all right with them?
Yeah. Well,
won a few.
That's all right, then I'm glad to hear it. But there's a certain mindset which people look at anything which is kind of random and not... if they don't feel that they've won the battle after deployment, with a few rolls on their side, they think, "Oh, actually, no, we need to make this more efficient. We need to get more bang for its buck." But of course, you can't just design armies for that crowd. You want people who's going to collect, who people like stories and all the other things, and that's always going to be. It's always that balancing act between flexibility and balance in an army. So with the Dark Elves and Vampires, we've wanted to make them as exciting as possible. People look at stuff and just go, "That's really cool." And then within that, hopefully, there are at least for those people who want to do those power builds, at least 2 or 3 choices are not necessarily...
It's not just one.
Just one. Now, to a given sort of value of balance, those armies may be more efficient than some of the previous armies, and possibly some of the later armies as well, just at doing that because of the way they're designed, I think. But I think can't speak for demons because I didn't write them particularly. I don't think that the so-called abuses that people... The abuses I find are at least characterful. They're not out of character, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
In that, if you're going to have a huge magic-heavy army, why wouldn't it be the undead and lots of necromancy and things like that? It doesn't break the image of the army the way some of the most efficient builds people find in them.
I can
think.
see that. So it's
Feel
like
free to
when,
disagree. I mean,
when
I'm
the-
not.
no, I
not
can
me-
see
I'm
that.
not just pontificate. I don't. It's like a Killy Dark Elf army is a Killy Dark Elf army.
Yeah.
You go, well, if anyone's going to be Killy, it's going to be them. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not the same as the Empire army that's just dwarves and ogres and steam tanks or whatever it might
or
be.
the Skaven army that was ultra reliable, set at the back and shot you off the board.
Exactly, that's it.
Yeah.
Where you go, well, no. If the best army is the most characterful one, I'm not saying necessarily the kind of the invocation spam is necessarily the best characterful vampire army, but it's of a type. If you see what I mean, it's better than having the, loads and loads of little. At least it involves having some big blocks of troops and raising dead guys up rather than something else.
Yeah, something like lots of small spammy units.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so have you ever played Tournament Warhammer?
And not for a while. I took part in, for Warhammer, I played in a couple of staff tournaments. I think in the second one I won most sporting opponent and got a certificate that I had signed. Hey, I'm number one. And I played a couple of Warseer 40k tournaments as well. So,
the Carnage ones they do.
oh well, these were years ago.
Oh, right,
So
right.
we're talking whenever, probably 99, 2000, 2001 sort of time.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, not that long. Easy now.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I suppose it is. Yeah, it's at least 2 editions ago. I suppose that's worrying.
Okay,
Well,
so
3 editions now. I suppose.
yeah, it is. So, what sort of armies do you like to play, and what sort of style do you play on the table?
For me, the armies that appeal is very much dependent on the game system, and again that image I have in my head of what that game's about. So for Warhammer, and it's the dwarfs again because it's just about those blocks of infantry and a few more than a few war machines sometimes, and because it is about that solidness of the line, and that's what appeals to me. Like I say,
Wall of silver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And they're dead easy to paint. If you can dry brush, you can paint dwarves, basically. And actually, with all the new inks and stuff, it's even easier now.
Yeah, definitely.
They're fantastic. Whereas 40k is all about firepower and manoeuvre, which is why I went for Eldar. And that was my thing. I mean, I love the imagery as well. And when White Dwarf 127 came out and had all of Jezzy's new concepts and new models and stuff, it just blew me away to this day.
I do love how people always remember a white dwarf. There's always
That's the one. It's my
there's always a
favourite.
number that sticks in your head for a white dwarf.
Yeah, dragon on the front. Anyway,
Also, amazing how many people you talk to go, oh yeah, Jezza's concepts as well.
oh, that
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Everyone says that.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. That was a game changing moment in 40k. I think they kind of not only did it redefine the Elder, but it was actually it was a kind of a signal of a new approach to sort of the portrayal of the races in 40k and things like that, and just the depth of the background outside of the Imperium. I mean, we had Wild the Orcs and Realm of Chaos and stuff like that, but that was just something that was designed. It was designed as a range. It hadn't been accreted over 5-6 years. It was suddenly, here's a new look, and it was completely different from anything. It was out of the blue. It wasn't an evolution. It was suddenly you've got these aspect warriors and this avatar and these farces, and you just go, wow, that's just completely. That's just not that. That was really the moment when they stopped being elves in space and became Eldar.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
as
I
various
remember.
other armies went through that sort of process. So, kind of pivotal moments that you just remember.
So you've stuck with the Eldar for the 40k ever since. Does that transpose into the Epic and the
I know, like I say, so for Epic, it's all about the Horde.
Titan? Oh, the Horde.
It's all about the Horde. Loads and loads of. If you're going to play an Epic game, I mean, I don't have them anymore, but I had my huge Orc War, which had loads and loads and loads and loads of models. Because it was just a sea of green with these big gargants and the weird boy battle towers and everything, all the other madness and stuff. And for me, that was an epic army. I didn't want a tiny little flitty Eldar for that, because I wanted a carpet
Fill the
of green.
table, yeah.
And against my mates Imperial Guard, it was always fantastic because it's just loads of stuff. By the end of 1.5 turns in, there was hardly anything left. That was the way it worked. But
So how does your playing style on the table transpose into your game development style? Does it come over at all, or can you separate that of how you enjoy playing it to how you write the books and the rules?
I think there's obviously going to be certain bias that you've got to certain play styles, certain types of army. And one of the things is when you're scheduling stuff with the management and things like that is you're looking at the projects that you think either you've got a bee in your bonnet about I'd written the next Eldar Codex, or I want to redo these guys because I didn't, I think I dropped the ball the last time round. I'm going to make them great this time.
Do you get much say in that?
Uh,
Can you sort of bagsy a project, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, yes and no. I think everyone's preferences are known. And I think where possible, you don't get to pick and choose every project. But if you've got ones that you want to work on, then you can work out. You can sort out a schedule that it won't change the release order if you can't do it and you're not available. It doesn't matter. Somebody else is going to. But if certainly if for example the Eldar Codex was coming up again, the management team and Games Developer will get together to try and make sure that Phil's available to do it, because he's just a huge Eldar fan, has just got a natural affinity to it. But one of the things that you have to get, and it's going back to that sort of passion and enthusiasm we were talking about earlier, is you just have to be a professional enthusiast about whatever it is you're working on next. And actually, when I was there and people used to ask, what's your favourite army? It was always the one I was working on. Or somebody else, as Lawmaster, somebody else was working on. So while we were doing Lizardmen, I loved the Lizardmen. I thought they were fantastic, Tomb Kings. I wanted to collect Tomb Kings for ages. That was a great project to work on, actually. But it's always that. And I did the Dark Elves, and I'd love a Dark Elf army, actually. Just because I'm really pleased with what, because you have to get under the skin of the army, and by doing that, excuse me, what you're trying to do then is find out what it is about the army that enthuses you, and then pass that on to everyone else.
Yeah,
which is why you get slight changes between authors and things like that. And same with the vampires. You go, I'd love to have a vampire army. So, but it's a bit weird. I suppose now that I'm not actually working on a particular army, I can kind of sit back and go, it's still my dwarfs, actually.
Yeah.
all of these 5x9 new races and stuff. Well, everyone's got their first love.
One of the things I did want to touch about was the 6th edition Dark Elf Revision. Obviously, I mean, it's been done to death on the internet. You've spoke about it on your blog. You've done interviews for DruChinet. Yep. One of the ones that I wanted to... Well, we can touch on how it came about, and then I want to particularly know how, once you were on board with it and you agreed that, this probably does need doing, it's a good idea, how you convinced the boss, so to speak, that you could actually go back and do it?
Well, I'll start off by saying there was kind of a very games dev-led environment in the studio at the time. It was myself, Andy Chambers, and Alessio were sort of head of the 3 teams. There was a bit of from the 40k side, actually, there was a bit of impetus because the Dark Eldar had been redone, and the Dark Angels had kind of that codex redos as well, just to fix some stuff. And at the time, because we had the annual, we actually had a vehicle by which we could retrospectively apply changes to people's existing books. The problem's always been that you've got a physical book on the shelf, and if it's anything more than just fixing a few typos or correcting a few profiles that are contradictory in the summary and in the army list or stuff like that, then you're talking about rendering a whole load of stock invalid. And that was always the big problem about, and still is, about this idea that you can do huge online FAQs and change all of this. And the first problem is that, so you're a guy who owns a store and you've just ordered 20 Dark Elf books. You don't want to find out next week in White Dwarf that actually, they've changed it all. There's real world issues.
Never thought of it that way.
No, no, exactly. That's what everyone moans.
I think that's what a lot of people don't think.
No, they don't, and they shouldn't have to. The point is, as the consumers, as the gamers and stuff, they shouldn't have to worry about. That's what games developers and managers and things are for, to worry about sorting stuff out. But the other thing is, it creates an expectation. So you fix something this week and suddenly online, and suddenly next week they say, you can fix it again. We don't like the fix, and you get stuck. And then once you get onto that sort of revolving door of rules development, where do you end? You're always looking over your shoulder trying to fix stuff rather than concentrating on the projects of you're doing now or on the future. But with the Dark Elves, basically, there was a prevailing wisdom at the time that actually, no, we can get away with doing this if we decided that the annual was the vehicle would be able to do this. Actually, and the main reason wasn't actually to fix the rules per se, but it was just that the army just lacked a bit of character. It was just a bit bland. And it was an odd project because I kind of inherited it. It was kind of halfway done by Thomas Prunen when he left. I was working on Inquisitor at the same time. I sort of picked up this project, taking over Warhammer. Just kind of, I'd done the Dwarfs before then, and sort of a lot of that early stuff, that conceptual stuff, and deciding about the miniature range stuff had already been done. I wasn't responsible for that. I was just literally sort of picking up a load of stuff for this book. So, in all honesty, it just didn't get the care and attention that any project should deserve, because most of my efforts were still on Inquisitor and trying to sort that out and make that awesome. That was kind of going through production at the time that I was writing Dark Elves. So, knowing that, it was like, well, can we have an opportunity to just tweak a few of these things? Now, actually, when I first started talking to the about the updates and stuff, the changes we sort of agreed were a lot more expansive. There was pages and pages of them, and then sort of had a chat with Rick, and he just went, "This is too much. This is we'd have to redo. So
it's a new book.
Yeah, it's a new book. It's not like, well, we'll drop these by a point, and we'll add in this new magic item." So I had to pare it down to the one page of kind of cut and paste sort of corrections that we could do, which I just thought would. The main one just being the biggest problem was just making spearmen cool, or useful at least. So you always have a problem with elves, particularly, but sort of elite fragile armies in Warhammer, because you either have to. You want them to be small elite armies, in comparison to, say, Skaven or Orcs and Goblins and stuff. But you don't want to have reams and reams and reams of special rules for every single troop type. Well, I wouldn't anyway. So if you make stuff just cheap, so you don't want 5-point elf spearmen, because that's not elite anymore. That's even if that's what they were. So you have to try and find a way of finding that balance of going, well, they're better than everybody else, and in some ways, certainly with the way the main rules developed, the core rules developed, a lot of the traditional elven advantages of sort of initiative and their movement and their leadership were undermined by lots of other developments in the system. And there was, and I don't think until now, really, that the system's ever been able to deal with them appropriately without lots of army special rules and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how we go with 8th edition.
I think initiative actually does something like that.
That's what I mean, yeah. And it's the same with the dwarfs and things like that, actually. There was a lot of changes from 5th to 6th edition particularly, which were very small, but made quite a lot of impact on the game. So getting rid of the movement penalty for barding, or was it for barding? No, for heavy armour and barding. Suddenly, all those heavy knights pursued 3d6 inches, not 2d6, stuff like that, which suddenly, that's why heavy cavalry got so good. The hand weapon and shield rules, the kind of devaluing initiative, all these kind of just little things, none of which kind of kills or makes an army, but the way the system kind of swung, some of those softer stats, initiative and movement and things, just became less important. And suddenly you're faced with elves that you go, well, they're not really elite anymore. They're just expensive.
Yeah.
So so you're trying to find ways to solve that. So at the end, we kind of chose a few basic changes that we could make that were easy to implement. We could put them in White Dwarf in the annual and put them downloadable online, and that was it. But of course, as I was saying, that then creates the expectation for people to say, well, we didn't like this. And you go, and actually, not because of what we did, but why we did it, I regret doing it. I wouldn't want to do an update like that for a book again. And actually, the codex changes we did for the Dark Elves and Dark Angels did cause quite a bit of confusion out there in the real world, because the books were exactly the same, but they had this little chapter approved stamp on the front. There wasn't enough distinction, and so actually doing that really taught me the lesson of no, actually it really has to be published and be damned. And as much as the gamers are impatient, they go, oh, well, it's another 4 or 5 years before you get back to go, yeah, well, the developers are the same, but you have to be that disciplined. It's actually the easy route is to suddenly just start changing your mind on stuff on a weekly basis and saying, oh, well, we can just change it online, and suddenly rendering that book invalid as a thing to buy. How would you go into a store with any confidence to buy a codex or a rule book if you know that 6 months down the line half of it might have changed? And that idea of the evolving development of the army books is bad enough when you've got 3 guys working on a couple of books each at any one time. If you imagine that actually, the clamouring hordes, suddenly elves are they've decided in the collective wisdom that elves are 1.2 expensive and clamouring for this. The whole change, you change that means suddenly orcs are 1.2 expensive, and this, you just can't stop. So actually, having that artificially imposed limit of, well, you finish here, the book gets printed, you don't get to touch it again except for genuine corrections and errata until you get back to it, is useful for keeping everything sane as much as, and you can't compare it to patches for online games or anything, because it's just not the same way. We can't instantaneously change everybody's book to match it. Not everybody's going to check websites for FAQs. Not everybody's going to get the latest errata. And the principle has always been, if you walk into any store or any club or whatever with your army book and your army, you can play somebody else. It's a bit tricky sometimes if you cross the borders and they're playing in centimetres in Spain or whatever. But in theory, the rules are the same. You know, American guys, Australian guys can come over to a grand tournament here and they're playing the same game and it doesn't matter where they bought their book, when they bought their book, whether they've ever downloaded anything. Now, tournaments obviously, again, put a slightly different emphasis on the importance of the rules and the clarity and that kind of stuff. And you can produce FAQs for those sorts of situations.
The thing with the tournaments as well,
you can't apply it to everything instantaneously.
No, of course you can't. With the tournaments, obviously there's a rules pack that goes out, so anyone enters gets the information that this has been updated. Make sure you know, but it doesn't apply to clubs. It doesn't apply to the hobby weekends. Yeah, all that sort of thing. Yeah.
And there was Alessio had a great story when he was started out, and he was playing because he was a big Skaven fan, and it was after the first Skaven Army book, and there was a small correction made. I can't remember the details of it, but the laws of Magic that were available to Vermin Lords were changed, and he went all the way through to tournament to his final game when his opponent pointed out, "You're not allowed to use that," and showed him a more recent edition of the Skaven book which had that law removed. So he'd been cheating pretty much all the way through the whole tournament. And that kind of experience taught him, hang on, you can't just make these changes willy-nilly, because how did he know? You know, he's like, I've got my Skaven book. If my book says this and your book says that, who wins? And then you start getting into it's online, it's this, that, and you go, well, you could have just made that up. Your mum could have just printed that out, or whatever it might be. So as much as you can, the printed page has to be, you know, the be-all and end-all of what it is, and everything else is just clarification and correction, not changes.
Is this part of the reason the annuals stopped?
Yeah, I mean, the correction side of the annual, the ability to be able to have all that genuine errata in one place, and actually there were some good things, being able to add in new scenarios or campaign systems. The thing is...
The City Guard list.
Well, but
I ruined some people's weekend with that list.
Yeah, that was good fun.
Oh, gosh.
Again, another, hey, let's make Spearman cool. That's what, you know, have lots of them.
The 8 bolt throws that made it
The
cool.
bolt throws as well, yeah. Well, and that was kind of the start. And again, it was this very games design-led ethos that we had at the time. The power went to our heads. And we ended up, and 40k, even more so than Warhammer, ended up as Army List of the Month. It was just with Index of Starties and Chapter Approved. And the idea was never... They should have always... They were always intended just to be kind of fun, cool stuff. And actually the annual also, the idea was a bit that being able to do releases for armies outside of that normal army book cycle, and there'd be a single point of reference, point of collation really for those rules. So if we wanted to add a new war machine, say, to the dwarves or whatever, we wouldn't necessarily have to wait.
Steam Tank, wasn't it? Was in that,
exactly. The Steam Tank was the prime example of, well, actually, we can release a model and the rules can be on the web and in the annual, and they've got access to it, and everybody should know, sort of, because there's a book in the store, and the staff, you know, will be able to say, actually, yes, this is where you get the rules from, and that's always been the other thing, is that access. But we abused it, and we got carried away. We did too much, you know, I think. And so, you know, the toys kind of got taken away from us. So stop making up army lists every single month, and actually, and also just for genuine, very commercial reasons, when you go, actually, we've spent 2/3 of a magazine talking about all these cool wacky conversions, and we've got one tiny little picture of this new release. You know, well, no, that's not right, is it? Because it was distracting as much as anything. You're so busy coming up with variant army lists for the 3 armies, you know, the army book you did 6 months ago, that you're not concentrating on the army you're doing now. And it just gets this dissipation. The other problem I have with it, and something we're still dealing with in terms of the game systems, is because it was a very games design-led approach, we ended up having very games rules-orientated solutions to what essentially should be background and hobby solutions. So, for example, the variant army lists could quite easily just be a cool... the Index Starters actually is the one that I kind of keep coming back to. Index Starters was always supposed to be about paint schemes. It wasn't supposed to be about rules, and it wasn't supposed to be about backgrounds and stuff. It's supposed to be about those cool painted diagrams of
Yeah.
this symbol goes here, this symbol goes there. And we restarted it because there wasn't enough room in Codex Armageddon to do the Black Templars and Salamanders properly. So we thought, we'll bring back Index Astartes. And it was never intended that they would have variant rules necessarily. You go, here's the White Scars, and actually the article that should go with it is a hobby article that says, here's how to use the ordinary Space Marine list to collect a White Scars themed army.
Yeah.
You get lots of bikes, and you get this, that, and the other. And you need flexible army lists to do that, and that's one of the other problems. But actually, it shouldn't be about. But it turned into people can't collect all these variants, and they can't sort of enjoy and indulge in these different parts of the background and all these different chapters or variant armies from Warhammer stuff without there being an actual variant in a list, a rule for it.
Yeah,
and we're still dealing with that to this day. Why don't my Night Lords cause terror? Why don't why aren't the Knights Griffin different from the Knights Panther? You go, because they're just a colour scheme. They're a different way of collecting your models and painting them the way you see fit. And as soon as you start ascribing rules to colour schemes, to what decal you put on the shield, you get into a world of madness. And we sort of fueled that. And I think, but once you start giving that to people, it's, they've got a right to expect it more. You go, well, if he's got it, why doesn't my army get it? That kind of stuff. So I think it's a tortuous road back from there, but it's getting there.
But on the flip side of that, it is good to have all these rich stories and background about all the different aspects of the Empire with the different knights. And so why shouldn't there be rules for each one? Each knight's trained differently in the stories at the different places. And
the problem comes down to, on the face of it, you're right, and actually, but the big problem is the power to do that only resides with the games developers. It doesn't reside with the community.
Yeah.
And so not only does that put a huge amount of pressure on the games developers to provide that sort of material, it robs the community of the power to express and explore the backgrounds themselves. So if you want to invent a knightly order called the Knights of the Bad Dice...
There's an idea.
I can see that on the banner, actually. It'd be quite cool.
And then that's flaming dice.
The flaming dice, why not? That'd be a good banner. But because you've invented them and you're not a games developer, they don't get any special rules.
Yeah.
And you've not got the power. And actually, games developers shouldn't be about hoarding power for themselves. It's the same with the background, same with the paint schemes. All of this actually should be about the gamers, the hobbyists, being free to explore their own imaginations, the settings, the tactics and stuff without prejudice from the rules. Either punishing or rewarding them. The choices they should make, they should be allowed to make aesthetic choices without feeling that they're doing themselves a disservice, and conversely, there's people who will do it purely to get a benefit where they're not actually really bought into that background or whatever. So I think, on the whole, making thematic, aesthetic differences not important in the rules is... gives more people choice in a weird way.
So is this why the current Space Marines have got the rule where you can have the special character for the Ultramarines, but he can also be in a White Scars army or a
sort of.
Army,
again, it's a bit of a foot in both camps sort of solution.
Yeah,
I've got to be honest, I found that very odd.
Well. Yeah,
I can see why it's in there. So it's not fair on someone who's painted up this one army and then all of a sudden can't use this.
Well, exactly. But it comes down to there's a presentational issue really, and it's one of the things we just don't talk about well enough in sort of like White Dwarf or the codexes or army books and stuff. Which is at the end of the day, if you want to take Marnie's Calgar, paint him green and call him Barney Calgar and say he's chapter master, rules-wise he doesn't change. There's nothing to stop you doing that except a certain amount of sort of anal retentiveness on the part of your opponents. And what's happened is that's kind of got a little bit enshrined in the rules rather than just being that assumption, that convention that exists in gaming. And it's slightly different. It's not like you can turn around... because the background's entirely fictitious, it exists to be explored. It's not like fighting World War II and saying, well, actually, now I'm going to take Tigers in my British Army because they're cool. And in the same way that people still wouldn't take shock attack guns in their Space Marine army. You go, well, you don't cross over that way. But within the army, if you want to pretend, because you want people to be able to model what they want, paint what they want, and enjoy that and explore it to the best of their ability. So actually the fact that they've modelled these really cool variants of, their savage orcs who happen to be riding something else other than boards, they're kind of the whole kind of counts as mentality as much as anything else. You don't want to sort of stomp all over that. And I think that's kind of the idea behind the Space Marine character thing. But going back to that, it's a legislative, rules-based solution to what's really just a real-world issue where you should be able to, in the blurb somewhere in White Dwarf and talking to people, you just say, it's all right to paint him green and call him Barney Calgar. And stick them in your force, and the rules don't change. But there doesn't seem to be the vehicle for doing that at the moment. So, and a very literal attitude to what the colour schemes or the rules or the miniatures represent. Whereas actually they're not very literal; they're the complete opposite. They're very vague, deliberately, for people to do what they want. The rules are just a framework for collecting miniatures, rolling dice, pushing stuff around, and having fun with it. And if you want to make up your entire chapter of female Space Marines for whatever reason. Everyone can point and laugh at you, but you absolutely have the right to do that in your version of the 40k universe.
Of course.
Now, what rules you use for it, that's when it starts. People then start going, oh, you should use this to the battle, again, being very literally minded about certain things. It narrows the scope, it doesn't broaden it, it's weird.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so swinging back to Warhammer a bit, you mentioned earlier about you being a lore master. So how did this come about, and what was it? And you're obviously proud of that.
Yeah, I was the lore master. Well, Andy was the 40k overfiend. Essentially, we decided, up until then, traditionally speaking, games development, everyone worked on everything. So Jervis wrote army books and codexes, Andy wrote army books, codexes, Rick wrote army books, codexes, blah, blah. But it came about that actually we all started sort of just being siphoned off into these two sort of teams. So there was although it wasn't really enshrined anywhere, there was some of us that worked on 40k and some of us that worked on Warhammer. And then after 6th edition came about, it was decided that actually we would enshrine that. So we'd have 3 or 4 of the guys on 40k, 3 of them on Warhammer, and then 2 on Lord of the Rings. Once we got the Lord of the Rings licence. So Warhammer Lore Master just basically meant I was in charge of Jake Thornton and Anthony Reynolds.
It's a damn good title, though, isn't it?
It was. Well, that was the... That,
Did
that
you
was,
have business
that
cards?
Was, yes, exactly. Yeah. I had a business card that said Warhammer Lore Master. And Andy said 40k Overfiend on it. That was part of the deal, was that, we get to choose our own job titles. We're not going to have some rubbish sort of corporate...
But you've still got a business card, though, haven't you?
I've got loads of them. Unfortunately, I can't use them anymore.
You can give them
I couldn't use them in the last couple of years I was there because I've stopped being Lore Master at the time. And that was it. From that point on, it was sort of like the game's dev champion. So there was literally staff management. We had guys working for us as well, but it was also being that voice for what being very involved in the planning of the White Dwarf content for that game system, working with the miniature designers, working with management, planning out the release strategies. So deciding that we were going to do Ogre Kingdoms or actually Storm of Chaos, that kind of stuff. So being involved in that sort of thing. And we kind of had a vague rule, actually, which was, well, I did anyway, which was like, if it made me laugh, it went on the schedule. Not necessarily funny far hard, but there's certain things that are just so cool, they make you laugh, you just enjoy them so much. You go, that's awesome, we'll do a Chaos Dwarf Hell Cannon, why not? That's just cool. So and being involved in that sort of thing, but then also briefing the guys and working with them on their individual army books and things like that, and just being the old man of the team, sort of most experienced man of the team, I suppose. which was weird because I'd only actually been there 6 years at the time, so it wasn't.
I was going to say the old man of the team at what, 26, 27?
Yeah, not me. Yeah. Well, that was always one of those weird ones. I mean, Games Workshop was a very young company, full stop. Well, it was obviously not so much now, but it still generally is. So yeah, it's kind of weird that you sort of. But then I remember when I joined, and one of my bosses really sort of was Andy Chambers, but he'd only been there 4 years. Actually, when I think about it, and so it's that very rapid sort of experience advancement sort of thing. So yeah, we did that. We decided in the end that actually using up the time of creators on managerial tasks wasn't necessarily the best use of their time, and brought in a proper games development manager and kind of folded them all together again. But by that time, we'd changed completely the way the design process worked. So that was another job instead, being lead background designer in the key design team, which lasted a couple of years, and then we disbanded that team, and anyway, all sorts of other things. So I had about 4 job titles in the last 3 years at Games Workshop.
So you moved around a lot. Did you?
Well, I physically stayed where I was.
Moved around you.
But the name on the card changed quite a bit, and my managers kept changing and stuff like that. So.
Okay.
And then I ended up just being a game. Well, the job I ended up doing was, let's go back to just doing games development, shall we?
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your favourite aspect of the games design? Was it the making the rules and seeing the rules coming together? Was it the background, or how did that work? Or did you just enjoy the whole experience of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the synergy of the two and having an army that kind of really expressed the background well. But as part of the process, the bit that I enjoyed the most was always working with other team members in the studio. So whether it's designers, the artists, doing stuff like the Ogres and the Wood Elves and the Bretonian reboot and stuff like that, and having a bunch of guys sitting in a room thinking, what would be really cool? Or, you get Dave Gallagher coming in and he's got his sketches for the Grail Reliquary and just going, well, that's awesome, we've got to get that in the army somehow. Or vice versa, coming up with a cool idea and then saying to a sculptor, oh yeah, could you do a mock-up of this? Why don't you do stuff like that? That pure creative end of it. Because after that, design, like any other design job, then becomes part of a process. It needs an end result, but those sort of very conceptual end of things, I've always been about sort of the idea. The idea gets me excited, and then after that, it's more a case of making the idea a reality, doing your job. So, and that's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's not easy, and it's not the same for every single project, but you know what you do, and you go, well, once we've had all this cool playing around stuff, then it's just a matter of making sure you do A, B, C, D, E, and kind of getting it done. So there's a book comes out at the end, and the miniatures arranged in a bunch of boxes and whatever else. So yeah, that sort of white hot creative brainstorming and seeing and kind of guiding that as well, being involved in that, so you contribute your ideas, but also just because you might just say, it might be just a word that you use in a brief that gets somebody going, that the designer or the artist will come back and go, actually, yeah, that kind of fired off, and here's all these just different images, and you just think, wow, that was cool, actually. I just wrote that down with a bunch of other words. Or vice versa, you'll see a picture and you just think, well, that's got to be a true type, or that's a story, or that's that's something that we have to use, we have to do words for. So that was always the most exciting bit. And then the rest was a job. A really, really entertaining job.
Of course.
There are worse things to do in the world than sit down and write games and play games for a living and all that kind of stuff. But it's professional, it's part of a team, it's everything else, so some of the time.
So saying it's just a job, what was the day in the life of a games developer at Games Workshop? And how does that compare now that you're an author full-time?
Well, I started earlier as a games developer, but the commute was longer. To be honest, most of the time of a games developer and an author is pretty much the same, because you spend most of it at a keyboard typing. More so as a writer, you don't get to play. Quite often it'd be because you'd work out your week on the Monday, so everyone would get together and go, actually, I need playtest games for these, and you get 3 or 4 volunteers from the other team. So you go, all right, I've scheduled in 3 games for this week. Okay. I know.
You like that?
Jesus, that's awful.
But it's not true that we played games all the time. Just half the time. I don't know. But no, exactly, that was the cool bit. Apart from the fact is you can't switch off, you can't just play it as a game. Because it's something you're working on or something they're working on, and so you're thinking about it slightly differently.
Did you play games? Did you, obviously that's your day job, of an evening, did you get your mates around and just play Warhammer? Yeah. Not as much as I used to before I started. Yeah.
Or even in the early, as I got on, I played less and less outside work. But, still, I think, and a lot of the guys still collect and paint armies and things, because it's what you do. You don't just switch it off. The difficulty there is that you do give up your hobby to do it professionally, though. That is true. So what you try and do is, depending on your particular sort of personality and stuff, is how much you can keep the two divided. I mean, those couple of tournaments I was mentioning were quite good, because I deliberately took armies that I wasn't working on and I wasn't thinking about, and I just took them and went as a Warhammer player sort of thing. And I went to I can't remember what it's called now. That's very bad of me. Necronomicon in Florida, I think it is, or whatever, and went and played 40k. Yeah. That's when I was Warhammer Lawmaster, so I thought 40k is none of my problem whatsoever, and I can just take my elder over there and have fun, and that's all good. and so you kind of do that. You sort of have to shuffle around, or you end up playing, say, Necromunda or Blood Bowl, things like that. Again, you're not got any influence over, because as soon as it's vaguely related to work, well, for me anyway, my brain starts going there.
Yeah.
I couldn't. When I was Warhammer Lawmaster, I couldn't play a game of Warhammer without thinking, that again, filing it away in that mental bank again, and you know, you'll have a conversation. You'll have to look up something in the rules, because even if you write them all yourself and stuff, the discipline you have to do is go, no, we won't assume we know what it says, because that's the mistake. We'll check what I've actually written down or what it already says, not how we think we play it. And then you'll look at it and go, oh, that's a bit weird, bit, you know, the wording on that's a bit odd, actually. We'll have to remember next edition to change that. You know, so you never quite just switch off. Whereas if it's somebody else's problem, go and play Lord of the Rings, hey, that's a less serious problem if I find something wrong. Or whatever it might be. So, but yeah, and I was never really a particularly prolific painter necessarily, so I didn't particularly expand my armies hugely. I kind of updated them. I sort of, as new dwarfs came out, some of the old units got swapped out, and same with the Eldar and things like that. But you get people like Phil, who's just, you know, painting armies left, right, and centre, that kind of stuff, because he's a machine at it and really good gamer. So, but yeah, it can be difficult just to switch off at 5:30 and not think about Warhammer, especially if you're going to go and play a game or something. So you try and play other things as well. Get some perspective. That's the other thing. You don't want to become too isolated in terms of what games are and games mechanics and things are.
Okay, so back today. So again, you can schedule.
Sorry,
yes,
yeah.
fine.
Sorry, yeah.
Ben jumping in.
yeah. No. So. It's to be honest, it's a combination of if you're not testing something, if you're not getting to play a game for a living, then you'll either be in a meeting or you'll be writing. They're the three things you do, and there's increasingly lots of meetings by the time I finished there. But some of those meetings were great, you know, sort of like I said, there's big creative meetings or you get stuff done, and I think some of them are just kind of fairly routine project meetings, which you sort of go over the minutes and stuff. So it's I don't think there's necessarily a typical day. You wouldn't. One day isn't the same as the other 4 days in the week, but it's a typical week where you'll do all of those things. You'll try and get, and then you work out. You go, well, I've got these White Dwarf articles to do as well, and I've got got this project brief to write, and all of these other various jobs that you have to do, and then balance them out. So, and then your working practice changes. I mean, I tended to like to concentrate on one thing. So, and actually, if I really had to do writing, then I'd work from home. So you go, okay, I've got a Dark Elf bestiary to write. That's 18 entries or whatever it might be. Okay, well, I'm going to go home for the next 2 days and just write them from home, and not think about the rules side of it and things like that. And then there'll be days where you go, actually, you're going to spend 2 days just working over the army list, checking everything, and then get some games in the last 3 days of the week to check all those changes and stuff. So that's kind of that's the sort of the bulk. That is the job side of it, and I say all those meetings where people are checking up and going, well, where's this? Okay, this it'll be delivered on time, and then you go through the whole editorial process of corrections and all that kind of stuff, whilst at the same time, trying to work out the brief for the next project and what the web content is for that release that's just come out and all sorts of other stuff. So your brain's all you never fall into a rut necessarily, because there's always working on so many different things at once.
So I imagine. In the office environment at Games Workshop, there was quite a good creative atmosphere, is it, with a lot of the other games developers?
That's the idea, yeah. I mean, there should. I think there's a certain there's a certain benefit to sort of creative conflict sometimes as well. When I joined games development, it was always Andy and Jervis having raging arguments about stuff, but in a good way. In that sort of, when you respect someone and stuff, and you can say, no, you're wrong, and this is how I think. No, you don't understand. And so, and that's kind of, and you get that, and then you kind of get a synthesis of ideas and things. You don't want to just be one guy at a keyboard typing away of an army and not paying attention to what else is going on. And you have to incorporate everyone else's ideas and feedback. Well, not necessarily their ideas. You can, one of the perks is that, hey, it's my book, my ideas get lost. But that sort of the input and feedback and stuff, definitely. So, yeah, there has to be a lot. There has to be that team spirit sort of thing, and particularly in games dev, because one guy gets his name on the front and says, but actually everyone has a bit of a stake in each project. It's not the games dev team as a whole is judged by their efforts as a whole as well. Even though somebody might point out a particular developer and say, he's my favourite, he's my worst, and stuff like that. To be honest, if the team allows someone to fail, it is the team's fault.
Yeah.
But also at the end of the day, if your name's on the cover of the book, you take the credit and you take the blame.
Of course.
It's as simple as that. You go, if you allowed it to go through, so it's kind of a two-way process, really. And if people told you and you didn't listen, then, more for you, that's why. But then again, if people told you and they were wrong and you did it right, then you go, ha, ha, ha. That's what I take the credit for that. Yeah, exactly. But the more eyes you can have looking at a project, all that kind of stuff. And when you get onto a game, say like, new 40k rulebook, new Warhammer rulebook, Lord of the Rings or whatever, then that is huge team effort. That is all about making sure that across the project everyone's working on to the same ideas and the same. Something like Apocalypse, again, we're all doing data sheets each, picked a race each, and we each, but you're swapping ideas to make sure you're not duplicating all that kind of stuff. So that, and again, they're very good, for getting that sort of teamwork thing going. But now and again you need to just get your head down and ignore everybody and go, no, got a deadline Friday, la 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 la. I don't care what you think about your new Space Marine Codex, I've got to get the Dark Elves finished.
Yeah. So new Warhammer is pretty much out this weekend.
Yeah.
Have you had any hand? Obviously, you've been gone 2 years now.
Yeah.
But obviously we've seen you at Games Workshop now and again on nights when we've been down there, and you're always about. Have you had any hand in this?
Nothing to do with me, Governor.
Nothing at all.
No. I've not seen anything to do with it really. I was intrigued to have a look at the book as everybody else.
So you've not seen the book?
I was doing a signing in Bristol a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of had a bit of a peek, but no, I've not. I'm waiting for my contacts to sort me out. I'll have to go in and buy one otherwise.
It's a bit late. It's on sale on Saturday.
I know. Well, exactly. What's the point of that? I don't know. I just don't know the right people anymore.
So is this getting the juices flowing for getting back into the game?
I quite like some of the stuff I've heard and sort of read and things like that. I quite like the approach that's being taken. I think it's more my sort of thing. I don't, again, not necessarily on the detail of the rules, but on the idea of what the battle's about and the feel of it. And stuff like that. So what I'm going to do, I suspect, is I'm going to email someone like Phil probably and say, "Oi, give me a game. Show me how the new Warhammer works." I'll get my own intro game from the developers, clearly.
Yeah.
Or whatever it might be. And I'll give it a go. I really want to give it a go, actually, because if I'm honest, I haven't really played much 40k or Warhammer since I left. I mean, I've played a few games, but this might be the thing where I go, actually, yeah, cool. If I really enjoy it, then they'll get me enthused again.
I think the dwarves will love it.
I think they probably will as well. Yeah, definitely. So, so I'm looking forward to it. And it's kind of when you leave, there's a kind of sliding scale of things that you kind of enjoy moments of. So the first one is White Dwarf, where the first White Dwarf you look at, which hasn't got anything in that you've seen before. So you go, oh my, and just see a new one, and so just like everybody else, you get to do that kind of. You can't switch off because you look at stuff going, that's a bit odd, an odd crop on that photo, or there's a typo there and stuff. And you can never, or you can just get big headed and go, I wouldn't have done that, or they put that down. But then you remember that's what everyone else does anyway. They might not necessarily see some of the detail stuff, but so you go. There's the pleasure of that, and then there's the pleasure of the first army that you've had nothing to do with and seeing come out and just looking at it with fresh eyes and going, I've saw none of this. I've got no idea what any of the design philosophy was in the brief for this, blah blah, and again, sort of either saying, well, that's great, or I don't know, what were they up to? I wouldn't have let them get away with that. Rah, 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 rah. And then the last, and so this one is the first game, first full edition of a game that I've had nothing to do with. I haven't had to sit through any of the endless meetings about discussing what it's for and all the kind of stuff that ends up when you're working on a project for 18 months or whatever. You try and maintain your enthusiasm, but to be honest, when that printed book comes out, you go, hey, good. Whereas for me and for everyone else, it's the start now. So I'm looking at it, and the bits I've seen go, looks really cool. And I know there will be bits in there I'll disagree with as well, and I'll just think, why did they do that? And then I remember, I don't care. It's not my problem.
Of course not.
I think I can just enjoy it, and I can just whinge like everybody else now, and just point fingers. But yeah, so I think it's going to be really cool, actually.
Good stuff. So there was no talk of 8th edition while you were still there?
No, not really. I mean, interestingly, I think some of the changes, again, without really knowing too many details, but some of the changes are things that we wanted to try with 7th edition, but weren't allowed to. So it looks like because the brief was 7th edition was very much a clean-up sort of thing, and we tweaked stuff and did. Whereas I think they've let the boat out a lot more and just said, actually no, let's just go to town again. Because one of the criticisms of 7th edition which what was that? Well, it was all very professional and it's well done and everything else, but it didn't make a huge splash. It didn't change the way people gamed. It didn't make people. It was exactly what it was meant to be, a refinement from 6th to 7th, and we did our job so well. In effect, it kind of skimmed into the water without any ripples, and so you know, I wouldn't say suffered because of that, but this time around there's a lot more excitement. Love it or hate it, it's making more of an impact than what we did with 7th edition.
Well, we've mentioned that before on the show. I mean, with 6th and 7th being so similar, it's like 10 years of the same game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, where they've gone to a lot more. I think they've looked at various parts of the game which would just kind of verboten when we were thinking about redeveloping it, and they've gone, actually no, there's a lot less sacred cows about the game system, and a lot more of a sort of root and branch approach. So it's more of a 5th to 6th change, I think, than a 6th to 7th, or whereas we did a 4th to 5th change sort of thing. It was a tidy up and a representation, and we'll tweak a few things, and we'll make it look cool and put a great background section of maps and all this cool stuff in. Which I see they've kept, which is good, and that total holistic approach. So so I'm kind of, in a way, it's quite good. I've not really played for a couple of years. We had a very abortive attempt at the start of a Mighty Empire campaign with a couple of friends last year, but actually almost starting from scratch again with the new Warhammer, and maybe I might even collect a new army. I never know.
What would it be?
I don't know.
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think. See, I really like undead, actually, and skeletons are easy to paint. But on the other hand, I used to have, before I collected my dwarves years and years ago, I used to have an Empire army, and I've always liked Empire. But what I found is I obviously that was back in 4th edition, and you could have dwarfs in your Empire army, and I ended up buying more and more units of dwarfs, and then I thought, hang on, why don't you just get a dwarf army if you like them that much? So it could always go back to Empire.
So there's rules for allies in the new book.
Apparently so, yeah.
So you could have Empire and Dwarfs again?
Yeah, why not? That's cool. Well, that's the sort of thing I really like. Again, it's that slightly step back and just going... It's giving people freedom, and I think that's what's most important. It's one of the things that kind of has slowly slipped away a bit over the years. I mean, as someone who kind of grew up on Road Trader, particularly Road Trader, but, you know, early Warhammer stuff, you had to make up so much stuff. Becoming a games developer, it became a good grounding, apparently. But... at the moment, you've got ranges of army books, and it's a very slick system in a way of getting people started, and there's none of the, you know, sort of the headaches of trying to find out what's what that I had when I was started, you know, and having rules scattered over 5 different compilations and everything else. It's all very clean, but I think on the downside is it's a bit too clean, that approach sometimes. It doesn't have it's. The new Warhammer, I think, is quite good at saying, this is all about scope. Actually, it's all about you taking ownership of what you want to do with games, and here's loads of ideas and possibilities and stuff. And we can't give all of them to you. Here's some rules. Here's some miniatures. Go and have fun. If you want to tournaments, go and do that. If you want to do campaigns, go and do that. And I think that's the right approach. Actually, I think you can't pretend Warhammer or 40k are one sort of thing. Lots of people, everyone's got their own take on what makes a good game, how competitive they want to be, how narrative they want it to be. And I think a more narrative approach to the game really appeals to me. So, for my particular sort of stuff I enjoy.
Well, it does sound like hopefully you'll be back into the new one. And
Yeah.
It's sounding
I
that
hope
way.
so. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, we've had you for quite a while now on Warhammer, and obviously you've not done that for a couple of years, so I think we should talk to you a bit about your writing.
Yes,
so,
that'd be great.
First off, what was the decision to leave the games development and move into the writing full time?
There was a number of factors. The main one being I'd been at Games Workshop. I've been in games development for 14 years, and I was looking at sort of what I was doing. And as I say, from the heights of being Warhammer lore master and doing all sorts of things, and then key design team and lead background developer and stuff, and then I sort of thought about what I was going to be doing, and essentially it was, in the main, writing more army books, writing more codexes, and thinking, well, I've done this for 14 years, I kind of know how to do this. You know, people might argue otherwise, but as a challenge, it wasn't there for me creatively.
Okay,
every
so it's
was cool.
recycling the same thing on a 5-year scale.
Yeah, exactly. So I was doing the Dark Elves book. I was pleased to get a chance to do the Dark Elves book again, what I wasn't necessarily looking forward to would be doing it for a third time and trying to muster that enthusiasm again or whatever. And for various other, lots of other reasons, sort of changes in the structure of the studio and all this kind of stuff. Essentially, I was just thinking, well, this isn't. Yeah, I don't really. What I want to do now, that real blank piece of paper creativity sort of stuff. There's less of that now than I would like. And for on Games Workshop, for their reasons, we're looking at it and going, well, we're paying this guy as a senior game developer and stuff, but he's just writing army books the same as these and stuff. So we came to an agreement, and it's like, it's probably time to call, before we drive each other insane. And there was various other reasons, actually. I wasn't, my head wasn't straight in my personal life and stuff like that. So it was kind of a clean break, start freelance, take some time, sort myself out. And that was it, really. It was kind of, when I left Workshop, I hadn't decided I was going to go freelance. I decided I was leaving Games Workshop, or we had mutually decided it was time to leave Games Workshop. And I did various things, and I thought about, do I go into computer games? I can do all these various things. And as I was doing that, I just thought, I just see myself sitting and writing. I was being helped by sort of employment consultants types, and they're saying, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And the image I just kept going back to was writing more books, actually. That's what I want to do. That's really what I want to do. I want to write novels now. And sort of do a bit of games design on the side for a bit of fun, and kind of swap around. The day job had been games development, and the paid hobby had been writing novels up to that point. They were all done. They're all, all my novels are freelance. The early ones weren't part of my job or anything. But I've kind of swapped it around now. So, the day job is writing novels, and the paid sort of hobby will be toying around, coming up with game ideas and whatever else, and we'll see how that develops. So, and that was it, really. It was just, and actually just being in control of being my own boss was really good at the time. That after sort of from a very structured environment, just going, no, actually, I'm just going to do my thing, and I say, and I'm going to be able to walk from there to there, and I'm at work, and I don't have to sit through traffic, and I don't have to. I can get out of the rat race, and I can get my head straight, and all sorts of other things that were kind of bugging me at the time. So, and that was it, really. I was just like, okay, I'm going, life of piracy, and stuff like that. And then, of course, then came the terrifying, crushing reality of going. The problem with freelance is you don't get paid at the end of every month.
Yeah, it's like we're self-employed.
Yeah,
similar sort of thing.
So, what was your first day like when you realise you're not going to get up for work and you haven't actually got anything to do?
Well, I spent about 6 months. The first 6 months, kind of
have some time off.
Yeah, have some time off. Time off and planning things, and thinking about how I was going to approach it. There was Black Library work, I was going to build that up, and some various other things. So it's like, well, am I going to get into some more games design, and would concentrate on the novels, that kind of stuff. What I really, it was thinking about the non-Black Library side of writing. I spent some of those earlier months was just thinking, well, what sort of stuff do I want to write? It's going to be science fiction, it's going to be fantasy. All of these ideas I've had over the years, just making notes on them and scribbling things on flip charts and stuff like that, and kind of getting some ideas, because I knew I didn't want to I had an opportunity financially to not have to do anything for a while, between various savings and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm all right at the moment.
No need to rush.
Yeah, no need to rush. I don't have to leap into a job, and that was it. And having that time to reflect was very useful, and ultimately very very wisely spent, because it was during that time that I was able to come up with the stuff that was picked up by Angry Robot, which was the non-Warhammer stuff. Whereas if I just had to launch straight into doing more and more Black Library, then you just, once you're on that sort of treadmill, that makes it sound arduous, it's not, but once you're on that treadmill of commissioned work for something like Black Library, they'll take as much as they can out of you, because they will, and that's what they're for, and it's good because it's work. Why would you turn it down? And so once you're there, suddenly you'd find out, hang on, where's those 3 months that I would want to, do my own stuff or whatever. So it was very useful to get that balance between sort of commissioned stuff and more speculative stuff and things like that. It was Malekith was the first one I think I wrote. I finished freelance. I was already writing it. The timing's all gone a bit fuzzy already. I can't believe it.
It's not that long ago.
Yeah, well, no, long enough.
Yeah. So you
But
said...
I was planning Malekith at the same time I was writing the Dark Elves. That was the benefit of it.
Oh, okay.
So I could put things into the Dark Elf background that I knew were going to be in the novel, and cheat. So I think but I think I kind of wrote that freelance. So that was it. It was just sitting down there, and I can't remember the very first day. There wasn't a first day really, because writing's, again, there's various stages of it. There's the writing bit, which is actually thinking about stuff, and there's sitting at the keyboard typing bit, and they're not really the same thing. So I was writing from day one, but typing from day 60.
So the Time and Legends series, obviously, I mean, I'm a big Warhammer fan. Like you said earlier, the whole series stuff is just stunning. But for me, it's all the Warhammer, and the Time and Legends, when that first came out, was just brilliant for me. And then obviously you got the Malekith series. Was that a battle? Was you there waving your hands? I want to do that, or
No,
did they approach you because you was writing the book, or how did that pan out?
What happened was, a couple of years before they started the Time and Legends series, I sort of had a chat with a few people, and I said, "Is there?" Because the general idea is that the current Warhammer world is the reign of Karl Franz. Most of it's very Empire centric, that sort of thing. But being who I was, and sort of like I do have huge privileges of having been sort of like a games developer and the lead background designer and stuff like that. I can kind of take liberties with stuff that a lot of Black Library authors wouldn't be allowed to get away with. So I think it was before I'd left Workshop, I'd said, well, how about doing some historical novels? And actually, I think it was because Adam had just started working on the High Elves book, and I was reading over the High Elf timeline, just going, "This is awesome. This is, fantastic background, fantastic story." So I wrote a proposal for The Sundering as a trilogy. Sent it off to them. "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we're good with that." And nothing happened. And obviously, in the meantime, over the next year or two, Horus Heresy was being really successful, and they thought, well, okay, let's try and get some of this action for the Warhammer, bump up the Warhammer sales a bit and stuff. And so they got back to me and said, well, about this proposal, do you want to do it as part of this Time of Legend series? Like, yeah, cool. And so that was it, really. So they caught up with me. No. But then, actually, in the writing of Malekith, we had a big argument about the title, because the Sundering trilogy I'd proposed was very different from the way that it's worked out. But their idea behind the Time of Legends was very much this focus on characters. So it's Sigmar, it's Nagash, whereas mine was much more of an ensemble sort of thing. It was just went from the start of the Sundering to the end of the Sundering, and various characters appeared and stuff. And they wanted to go, we want to call the first one Malekith. So we can't call it Malekith, it doesn't appear until the last third of the book, and he's hardly in it. And it was through that conversation with Nick, the editor, that I've made the realisation that I'm writing the wrong book. Not just for their series, but you go, no, this isn't the book that readers are going to want. Actually, they do want to know about these big important characters. That's what they're right. This is what Time of Legends is about. So.
You started with Venarian then?
No. It was no. I mean, it was just that there was a character, Carathrill, was a captain in Malekith and Shadow King, and he was actually the thread that linked the story of the Sundering together, and it followed him. And then I thought, hang on, I'm doing exactly the same thing that I've accused a few other writers of doing, which is if you're going to write about big events and special characters and important characters, write about them. Don't invent your own characters. So between those two things, I went, I'm writing the wrong book. People don't want to read about Carathrill, what I've made up. They want to read about the characters that are already in the Warhammer world. Belshazzar and Malekith and Alathanar and stuff like that. So that kind of solidified it. So there was about 45,000 words of that first novel. I'd written about 60 or 70 at this point, and then we said, well, actually, no, we can reuse that, because Malekith was in it, and a lot of the Carathrill stuff was still useful for tying stuff together. And then I had to go back and rewrite the other 40,000 words to turn it into Malekith, and then we extended the story right back to his origins, and that became his story. So it was a bit, and actually, in retrospect, it would have been nice to have another 50,000 words. I think that's which it was when I was writing, because they were all planned for 100,000 words now. So when I was doing the second one, Shadow King, we decided I'd written it to 100,000 words to my plan, and I was looking at it and thinking, well, there's so many threads here and stuff. We're just not. If I tie all these up in the third one, Calador, there's going to be no room for Calador's story. Yeah,
Yep.
by the time we've got all the threads from Malekith finished and all the stuff, and you go, there's no Kalador story. So we decided from then on, we'll make them 150,000 words, make them big proper epics and stuff like that. So I added another 50,000 words into Shadow King and lots of story that I'd had to kind of leave out, and hopefully there'll be enough. So, and I think Shadow King really benefits from that extra space for the story, and I think Malekith would have done if we'd thought about it earlier. You know,
The Shadow King. How much did you have to fight off Adam Troke for the Shadow King book? Because I know he's a big fan, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Of the
Well, no, again, because I'd kind of done a bit of because I did a bit of the planning for the trilogy, original sort of overview of the trilogy, which did have Aleph featured in it. And I chatted to Adam while he was doing Hyle's book, and I had a particular thing. The scene where Aleph and it's one of Malekith's lieutenants, Aesir, are sort of holding off Nagarothi. It was very different in my original plan, and then Adam looked at it and actually he wanted to write the it was, I think it was how Aesir died, and it was, so the Battle of Black Fen he wrote up in a more detail in the High Earth background, and we kind of talked about it together. So that then became what informed the trilogy, or informed the novel, that sort of thing. So it was kind of between us. So he did have some impact on it, actually. And the idea of the standard falling as the dragon came down, all that kind of stuff, was his scene, actually, that I then had to incorporate into the novel. It was very different from the scene I had originally planned for that sort of thing. So yeah, he got a little bit of influence on there anyway. So he can look at it and go, oh, that was my bit. So.
Nice. So the next was obviously Kalador.
Yeah.
And there've also been Tales of an Aryan coming soon as well. Now,
yeah.
How's an Aryan going to fit into the Time of Legends series? Is it going to be his whole new trilogy just for an Aryan, or is he into
no,
Sunday?
It's an audiobook.
It's just an audiobook?
Just an audiobook, and it's his quest for the Sword of Cain.
Oh, right, okay.
And it's and the way I've written it, and the way it's narrated, it's got a female narrator, which is fantastic, actually. Does a great job, but obviously, and then they've got a male voice for Anarian and Draupnir and stuff. So it's almost like the elves' version of the story. So it's very epic. It's quite, I mean, it's not literally poetic, but it's of a style that's a bit different. It's very much written for the spoken word sort of thing, for the audiobook format. Just that one specific thing. So and again, because it's just a cool story, that idea of the demons coming to him and trying to stop him, and the elements themselves trying to fight him, and all this kind of stuff. And there's a nice repetition and sort of saga feel about it. So yeah, rather than trying to write the entirety of Arian's life in a novel, Malekith was bad enough. And again, could have been longer. So it was just, let's just take that. It kind of ties into everything that's in the Time of Legends. So for people who aren't aware of it, they'll go, actually, no, this is what started it all. This is the act that they're all talking about all the way through that series. Yeah. This is the drawing of the Sword of Cain.
The sword, yes.
And stuff. So it's all, but it's very standalone in its own right as well for people who just want to enjoy it kind of as a story.
So how did you approach that with writing it just as an audiobook and not as a novel that's going to be put out?
There's a couple of things you kind of do differently with the audiobooks that you do with things, because essentially they're short stories in terms of length. The first thing is you pare down the descriptions a bit, because there's sort of lots of technical reasons. Basically, the way people process information from hearing stuff and reading stuff is different. They don't absorb as much. You don't want people rewinding all the time to go, oh, I missed that bit of description. So the description is very sparse, and the dialogue again tends to be more script-like, because you don't want lots of he said, she said, because it just breaks it up while you listen. When you're reading it, they're invisible words, and you don't see them. You go blah blah said, whereas you don't really want that, because you listen. Oops, sorry. You listen differently, so that's the main thing. But also, there's a pacing to it as well. You want it rattling along at quite a pace. But also, I did the Horus Heresy one, Raven's Flight, and kind of did a few ideas with that. With this one, I really took the audiobook format a bit more, and there's a lot more use of sound effects and voice effects and things like that, particularly with the demons and that kind of stuff. The things I had in mind, so it's straying more into that radio play sort of territory. It's not, the audiobooks aren't just somebody reading out a book. And there's extracts on the Black Library website people should check out, because a lot of people seem to think, they go, oh, why can't you just print these? And go, well, to be honest, the printed versions may appear in omnibus editions and stuff like that later on, but actually they're written to be listened to.
Yeah.
And with all the sound effects, the voices, everything else. And it's a different experience, And a lot of people like listen to them while they're painting and stuff like that.
Is this something you're going to do more of?
Yep.
I mean, this
I think is the short answer.
fantastic for me. I mean, I listen to podcasts and stuff all day at work on my iPod and stuff like that. I mean, I've had talking on all week.
Yes. Well, I've got the complete, the BBC radio plays of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And I remember listening to them loads of times, and it's the same idea. And I think, they're looking at doing abridged versions, audio versions of some of the novels and that kind of stuff. And it's certainly something Black Library are very keen to do more of. And I'm keen to write them as well. And I love the development from doing Raven's Flight to Anarian is very good. And I think the next one I do, whatever it is, will be a step further, and that'll be where I go. I really hit my stride about what you can do with these audiobooks, and they've been bringing in sort of multiple narrators and stuff like like I say, female and male voices and stuff like that. It gives you different story elements you can play with. So it's really cool actually, and they seem to be very successful commercially as well. So
just
there's no reason
listening
to stop them.
Just listening to you talking about it seems like you're quite excited about this.
Yeah.
You said before about getting a bit repetitive with the Games Workshop thing, whereas this is sort of like you're on the boundaries, you're pushing a new media with this.
Yeah, very definitely. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to do, I want to do as writing, is do as many different things. You mentioned earlier that I did the script work for the Mark of Chaos computer game. Again, that was very different challenge from having the complete control of a short story or a novel. You're having to write to somebody else's idea in a way, that's always changing, or doing games design, or doing short stories. I'd love to do a screenplay, all that kind of stuff, comic scripts, that kind of stuff, because they're all different ways of expressing ideas through writing. Some of them involve other people, like a comic artist or a film director or the guy doing the narration, or you've got the pure prose really, which is just you and the words writing a novel, and they've all got different challenges, and sometimes it's nice to have that complete control. Sometimes it's nice to put out those ideas and go, well, here's a script, but we'll see what somebody else does with it. And the audiobooks kind of fall between the two, because they are my words and they're not changed. There isn't a huge amount of direction in that sense, but actually listening to that first sort of edit back, it's completely different, because it's a different experience from when I was rereading it myself, checking it. It's different to hearing somebody else and their take on a particular voice, or the effects they put in at this place, where you go, oh, that really works, or the music during that scene, and you go, oh, that, brings a tear to my eye, that scene. And for me, it's that variety that I find very exciting. I mean, doing Shadow King was good, or the way I've done the Sundering trilogy, rather than saying, here's one book, and then the next book follows on, and the next book follows on. They all overlap. So the Shadow King story goes back and re-examines some of those events from Malekith, but from his point of view.
Yeah.
And similarly, Calador, he will appear in Calador, but they'll be from Calador's point of view, and they'll be certain. There's a scene in Shadow King where he meets some of the Dragon Princes for the first time. So that scene will be appearing in Calador, but from the Dragon Prince's point of view, and to be honest, they're not that shy about telling him what they think of him. But even so, you'll still get that inside view. And I just like making these kind of slightly more complex, interweaving storylines. And Shadow King, I think, is probably, because Shadow King's got a lot of action, and it's got some romance in there, it's got all sorts of stuff. It's a very good. It's a great revenge drama and everything else. And because of the length and the space I had to explore that, I think it's one of the most complete novels I've written. And so it's kind of carrying that forward into Calador. Malekith was great, but it's more of it really is an historical epic. And the scope of it is so huge because of how long he lived. It suffers a bit in terms of some of the detail, whereas Shadow King's got the nice balance of these huge events and this very personal story. So it's trying to regain that balance as well with Calador, I think. Plus, he's just a cool character. He is.
Oh yeah, it's it's another major player from the Warhammer world, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we've talked about. I mean, this is obviously the Sundering stuff, but one of the things we would like to look at, schedule permitting, in the years to come. Problem is, my schedule's booked. But doing both Warhammer and 40k feels like it's scheduled quite quickly. So, but we would like to have some opportunity to do the further adventures of the Shadow King sort of thing. Maybe it's part of the Warhammer Heroes series, or maybe it's its own standalone series with Aleth and R. Just because he's he's the Batman of Warhammer world as well. I love Batman. So getting to and that sort of dark, twisted sort of revenge. Is it Batman with pointy ears? Oh, hang on, Batman's got pointy ears as well.
Yeah, so it is just Batman.
Yeah. But and he's a very conflicted character as well. And I love the idea of this. There's the two sides to him, and it is that it is the Bruce Wayne sort of Batman thing a bit. I tried not to go too heavily, but there's Alithar, the Prince of Nagaryth, who had his family slaughtered. And during the events of the book, he's very young. He's not long come of age and everything else, and it's traumatic for him. And he almost creates the Shadow King as this persona to deal with it. And you've got these two warring parts of his personality. And that kind of came about from reading the existing background, because you had this guy who nails dark elves to the cliffs and has done all these things, but also who's got kind of like the whimsy of dancing with Marathi at one of her balls and stealing the crown. And it seemed really weird, because he's not consistent. So I kind of incorporate that. You've got these kind of two sides to his psyche of the very capricious, carefree Alithar, really, who does silly stuff, and then there's the Shadow King, who's this brutal, vengeful part of him who takes over, and the various episodes within. And sometimes when Alithar realises what the Shadow King has done, it's too much for him. Almost, he breaks down. He has these stuff like that, and it's a complex character, and that just came about from what could have been taken as an inconsistency in the existing background, but it wasn't an inconsistency. It was just a way of approaching it. So, and I'd love to continue to explore that, actually. And some of again, you always, as an author, you always introduce secondary characters that you like, and you go, I'd like to hear a bit more about him. Who was cool? There's a couple of the shadows.
Spin-off.
Yeah, exactly. The spin-offs. But then again, some of them you just think, no, actually, no. Just keep him there. He's a nice cameo, he's a nice secondary character. He's just not that exciting. Doesn't matter how much you like it. Yeah.
Gives the reader something to think about as well. With was he put in there for a reason, or is it? Yeah. Is it going to be expanded on more on that?
Yes, definitely.
So you've now done your first. Is it your series of books? Have you done all three of them yet, or is it
I'm
just
writing
the one?
The second one. This is the Crown of the Blood.
Yes,
for Angry Robot.
You've just moved away from the Games Workshop universe, and what was the thought process behind that? How did you decide to go into a fantasy novel rather than a sci-fi?
I don't know, actually. I looked at... I think it's just because I think it's because I was working on the Sundering stuff at the time, and it was kind of... I had an epic fantasy sort of vibe going on. So it just made me easier to... that was obviously where my head was at in terms of the ideas I was generating. And also, the big influence on it is the HBO series Rome, and that style of... and 300, and that style of sort of retelling of those historical epics sort of thing, so, which just kind of translated better to fantasy than to sci-fi, I think.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
And so it's not... so it wasn't a conscious decision of I'm going to do fantasy, not sci-fi. The next... depending on how it all works out and stuff, I'd like to do some more non-40k sci-fi as well at some point. And it was just a more... I think it was a more natural segue, really, from Warhammer to sort of epic battle-orientated large fantasy as well. But very deliberately, the setting, the style of it, the tone, the actual language of the book and stuff is about as far from Warhammer as I could get it. So I didn't want, for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, I didn't want it just to be Warhammer, but without the name on it. Get accused of just going away, just writing more Warhammer novels.
Yeah.
And secondly, just because I think there's more than enough sort of pseudo-medieval fantasy worlds out there. So I wanted to do something very different. So it's a sort of sword and sandals, sort of Bronze Age epic. It's more, Ben-Hur than it is Jabberwocky kind of thing. And that was the idea. So it's a very distinctive fantasy world. It's quite low fantasy. Well, it's not actually. It's huge, overarching, weird fantasy stuff. But it's kind of... It's still got that one. I feel it's quite gritty. It's quite, it's men doing a dirty job for money kind of stuff, and that sort of level. There isn't wizards riding around throwing fireballs and stuff about, although there is some really strange priests doing odd things, and everyone rides around on giant cats, because I thought that was cool. I just get thinking of Battle Cat from He-Man. I'm just thinking, why not?
Why not? You're your own boss now. You can put what you like in.
But that was very important for me. It's because there was lots of, the whole empire and the kind of the world I've worked out, it's got a certain logic to it, and it all kind of sort of works and stuff. But I think any good fantasy world, and this is where Warhammer and 40k really do well over a lot of the other ones, needs whimsy, needs to be there because we can. It's that kind of Michael Moorcock, I'm just going to make some weird stuff up. And I wanted that, so I just decided I'm not going to have any horses in my world. horses, everyone's got horses, I'm not going to have any horses. And so therefore I've had to create this range of creatures of basically giant cats and lizards and snakes and stuff that people ride around on instead of horses. That's the kind of way. But also just because it's cool to have a guy riding around on a giant cat.
Yeah, definitely.
And coming up with... So, and that was it really, because... So it's one of those. The cover I think is quite good actually because it looks like it's kind of a sort of pseudo Greek hoplite guys, and they're all standing there, and it's all good. And then you look and you go, "Hang on, that one's sitting on a giant cat," and that's the sort of fantasy side to it. I think a lot of it you'll read through and you'll forget it's a fantasy novel because it's just about men and real politics, and it's about a general who's sort of gets, well, I wouldn't say gets a bit bored, but gets caught up in the politics of the empire he fights for, and it's all very brutal and bloody and nasty, and then now and again there's fantasy elements in there. You forget, it's so hopefully it doesn't feel like it's a fantasy world. It's a fantasy world. It's a world with some fantasy elements to it, which happens to be sort of Bronze Agey, sort of Persian-y, Roman, Macedonia inspired. Basically, he's a combination of Julius Caesar and Alexander of Macedonia, really, and a bit of Philip of Macedonia thrown in. So yeah, I'm doing the second one at the moment. Actually, it's going quite well.
Well, I do follow you on Twitter, and occasionally there's the odd why oh why.
No,
there is a bit.
Oh, I must go back and write some more.
Yeah,
there is a bit of that. It's true, and the World Cup hasn't helped.
No,
that's, talking about working for yourself, it's got benefits and it's got terrible temptations as well. Of not doing anything, being in charge of your schedule is all well and good until you're in charge of your schedule.
Yeah, you need a secretary.
Yeah, well, yeah. If once I'm earning enough, I have to hire a personal manager or something like that.
Okay, so what's this book series called then for the listeners, and where can they get it?
Okay, it's published by Angry Robot, who incidentally are now part of the Osprey Group. It's called The Crown of the Blood, the series.
Okay.
And they'll be able to buy it, sort of bookshops, Waterstones and stuff. It was going to be out now, but due to the changes at Angry Robot, it is now available end of September.
Okay. It's not too long then.
No, but it's available to pre-order on Amazon. Actually, Crown of the Conqueror, the second one's available to pre-order on Amazon. I haven't
So
even
is the
written
third
it
one.
There's the third one's right.
Yeah, the dogs like them, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. It's the same with the. It's the same with Black Library stuff. Title to be confirmed. I haven't even decided it yet.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a long lead time. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Actually, that's I don't want to say I don't enjoy the Black Library stuff because I do. It's fantastic, and I love every single book that I get to write for them. But it's one of those moments. It's like my first White Dwarf article, or it's my first. It's like doing 13th Legion, my first Black Library novel, or whatever. Yeah, which I see on the shelf here. It's fantastic. And Kill Team.
Yeah,
good choice.
We didn't set that up, honest.
No, honestly,
we really didn't.
Yeah, but you don't like Annihilation Squad, clearly. Whoever sits here. Nobody likes the end of that. Even so, they should. It's the only ending possible. But it's one of those things. It's a milestone for me. It's that like I say, it's that challenge of doing different stuff. So that my first, it was all me. If you don't, and the whole freelance thing. It's an intoxicating blend of terror and excitement, and it kind of you go through both on a daily basis of the excitement of this, and then the terror of going. But if I don't like it. Well, it's just me, and there's so many more things. Yeah, exactly. And that lack of safety net, which just means it's all kind of fairly seat of your pants, white hot kind of stuff, which I'm loving. And then I think about it, and I look at the bank balance, and I go, "Oops, let's just hope it goes all right, shan't we?"
Well, I'm sure it is. I mean,
but it's all good. It's all good now. There was a few months, but it's all good now.
Just listening to you talk about your writing, certainly from when we've just spoke about the Games Workshop side of things, so we've just moved into the writing. You seem to have been a lot more passionate about the writing side. It's like more exciting.
That's because of what I'm doing now. Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
And it comes off in how you're speaking. I imagine it comes off in your writing as well. So that's only going to be good.
There's definitely being able to do it full time and not dividing my creative attention between doing the games development and doing the writing, I think has helped a lot. Just having that time to create slightly more rounded stories, and just the experience of having more books under your belt and stuff like that, and doing different things. So I think this, I keep, you're always trying to learn and develop your skills of whatever you're doing, and trying not to repeat the mistakes of the past and stuff. So, I'm always just looking forward to what I'm working on or the next project. So the Warhammer, I've got loads of cool Warhammer and 40k stuff sort of lined up. I was in the last Horus Heresy meeting, so I'm going to
You got another
get myself a chunk
Heresy
of,
one.
I'm going to get myself a chunk of Heresy action. That would be good.
Excellent.
But that's also terrifying because it's not 140k. I'm very comfortable with. I know it inside out. Really, with Heresy stuff, it's all fairly new, and I've not been really involved in the series beforehand. So although I kind of know the basics, it was one of those being, sort of going into that, going, okay, so what's going on? Who's he? What's going on? And kind of up to speed, and it's because of the way the series works. And there's quite a lot of sort of tie-ins between the novels and things. That's going to require a lot of planning and stuff, which isn't my strong point, I have to admit.
Do you read them all as they come out?
No. Well, I mean, you can't read all the Black Library novels as they come out. It's just far too many.
No.
And I tend to, most of my reading actually these days is non-fiction. I mean, I try to read some. I'm just rereading some Michael Moorcock, Elric stuff at the moment, but. I get my inspiration from real history and from real things and reading New Scientist and whatever else it might be, and then kind of giving them a weird twist. And I'm not... So that I read that for inspiration. I can't really read other people's fiction for inspiration. I can read it for enjoyment, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. But, I'm currently reading, it kind of ties in with the kind of blood stuff, but I'm reading a biography of Alexander of Macedon, and some of the stuff in there is just amazing, and the story is fantastic. And it's because it's all tied up with kind of Greek mythology and the way he presented himself and stuff, it's pretty much fantasy as well. But some of the battles, everything else, you just go, they're just generally inspirational, so much cooler. The Siege of Tyre is just so much cooler than any fancy battle I've ever created myself, and that was a real battle, And so it's those kind of things, and then that fires you up, and then that gets the juices going. Whereas somebody else's rendition of something doesn't quite get me in the same way. That's more of a relaxed sort of just spend an evening reading something and enjoying the language and stuff. So, but I go through phases. I mean, so I'll read some Black Library stuff, but there's just too much to keep up with. And also, I just don't want it. I don't want it kind of encroaching on the thoughts of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think I've got my view of what I'm quite well steeped in Warhammer, I suspect, by now. And so it's kind of, I think it's important that each author has their interpretations, each author has their take on it. So I want to try and keep mine, without bleeding too much into anyone else's or letting theirs bleed into mine. So, but that's where the Heresy is different, because it's much more collaborative.
Yeah,
so.
You don't get much of a choice in that.
No, exactly. So, no, but it's good. Actually reminds me I need to go and buy some more books. I've almost run out. It's been a while since Christmas.
All right. Okay, so I think we've about covered everything. Is there anything else you want to add in what we've not spoke about?
I think we've covered most stuff.
Anything you want to plug? I mean, I've got notes on your blog and your Twitter, which is
WordPress, mechanicalhamster.wordpress.
I'll stick a link in the show notes.
And Twitter, and I've got my official Facebook page, and my not so official my Facebook page, which is very confusing. I think that's it really. I mean, I'm quite. The thing with the blog is there's quite a lot of writing advice in there, but actually one of the things I want to get on there a bit more is more gaming related stuff. Actually, so if people want to ask questions or post comments on gaming side of stuff, they should feel free to do so. Okay. It's only because I'm quite removed from it, so that's why I'm quite looking forward to actually playing 8th edition. I think because I think Gav's review of 8th edition might be quite popular.
Maybe a blog post on your first game in 8th edition.
Well, exactly, something like that.
For people to read.
Yeah. So I'll have to work that out and actually have a first game. So that kind of stuff. It never meant. I started it just as something to write. Actually, during those 6 months, just making sure I was again getting into routine of writing quite regularly, and then obviously it becomes a bit of a marketing tool and promotional thing as well. But I always intended to have more gaming content on there. I did a lot of the Dark Elf stuff, the FAQs. Well, not FAQs, sorry, the questions and answers, and stuff like that. So, but I've always intended to be quite interactive with fans. I mean, there's everything that kicked off with the whole Chaos Space Marine thing and all that was good fun. But I'm not shying away from that. I think that's good. I like that sort of debate. So
good.
So people can just turn up on Mechanical Hamster or on whatever on my Facebook and say, "Oi, you're rubbish."
Give you some abuse.
Give me some abuse, and I'll give you some back. That's the other great thing about not working for a company anymore.
You can say what you like.
Yeah, only I won't because I'm just a nice person generally. And sometimes it's a bit like shooting fish in a barrel.
Oh. Yeah, you do get them.
Well, if it's your site, then I generally don't edit or censor the comments on there at all. But it'd be easy to if I wanted to. Then you just look like you're winning all the fights, but where's the fun in that?
Of course. Okay, so before we go, I've just got a quick rundown of 10 quickfire questions.
Okay.
Fairly simple. Some of them are gaming, some of them aren't. So
Right.
Go on then. Do you want to lead off, Ben?
Okay, number 1. Who's your gaming hero?
My gaming hero would be Donald Featherston, who wrote Battles with Tanks and all sorts of other historical war games rules. Because I used to get them from Stevenage Library, and that was when I was like 10, 11 starting that. He was the guy. He was the man.
He was the daddy.
Yeah, so it was his fault.
Okay, so if you could choose a Warhammer hero to write in the new Black Library series of, I imagine, single book heroes.
Warhammer Heroes, yeah.
Yeah, who would it be?
I know, but I can't tell you because I am going to be writing about him.
Oh, that's rubbish.
But
What's your
he's
second
short and
choice?
beardy. That's all I can say. Well, to be honest, lots of them. Because again, it's a bit like that Project Enthusiasm thing. Most of the characters you think about and go, "That's a really cool story. I could do a lot with that." It would be a dwarf character. I mean, and Bugman, Thorgrim, Cazador, all of them have got great stories. So
Okay, fair enough.
Your favourite film?
it varies, but I couldn't pick one. Because it really depends on the mood I'm in. So, if I give you a top 3,
Yeah.
The Crow, one of my favourite
I used
films.
to love that.
Awesome, yeah. I would say The Fifth Element. It's a really good, sort of very European
an
style
interesting
film.
one.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's got a lot of bad press, that one did.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's because it's very style. It's got a very certain style to it, but I like it a lot. And the story's just kind of a very romantic sort of. I'm a bit of a sucker for some of that stuff, despite all the death and gore that I write about. I'm a softie, really. Honest. And the third one I would say is A Bridge Too Far,
Okay,
which
so
is just
quite a
so
mix,
full of British stiff upper lip. It's unbelievable, and there's some Americans there as well.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your favourite book? I imagine it's the same sort of thing. You've got a big range of them, have you?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I reread and reread Lord of the Rings loads of times. I would say my favourite sci-fi book is probably Accession by Ian M. Banks, which is great. It was ultra tech. Read it. Huge ultra tech, the culture and stuff, and I love all that sort of thing. But that one's all about the spaceships and stuff, and it's just got some fantastic things in there, and they're all very badly behaved. And I suppose, I don't know. Yeah, too many. I can't pick a favourite.
Yeah. Okay, next up.
What would you be doing if you never worked in the gaming or writing industry?
I have no idea. I might still be working in an off license, which is what I was doing shortly before. I genuinely, I do think about that sometimes. I suspect. I must in an alternative universe somewhere have ended up in other creative industries or whatever else. I might have ended up going back and maybe trying the illustration and stuff. But I was such a feckless youth. I can't imagine. I couldn't. I kind of got by on
Such a what?
feckless.
Feckless youth.
Feckless.
What's feckless mean?
Without direction or focus.
Okay.
Yep.
That I've no idea, because I didn't really plan to get this job.
No.
I happened to get it. The one thing I had thought about doing, I decided I wasn't going to do, and so I was kind of in the. So I would have found something. Luckily, I've existed on wits and being smart rather than educated most of the time. So I would have found something. I would have ended up being an advertising executive or something. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay, so do you have any gaming habits or superstitions?
Yes, I guess I do. I have the totally unscientific idea that, of course, if a dice rolls a 1, it's more likely to roll another 1, which, of course, has got no basis in reality.
See, I'm the other way.
And I never say, and it's always the artillery dice, not the misfire dice.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you never talk about the bad.
And you never say anything but a 1.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of the common stuff. It's the common stuff. I don't have
Nothing
to
too weird
I don't
on
have to
it.
spin 3 times with a shins before I roll my dice or anything like that.
With
or-
shins.
Yeah. But all my characters are named. That's always important. Even during playtest games, I'd always put on my playtest army list. I'd always have to name all the characters.
Oh, right, I like that.
So
Okay, next one up.
What's the last 5 podcasts you listened to or blogs you read?
Do you listen to podcasts?
occasionally, not huge amounts. Not out. I think I just haven't found the time to have a read around or listen around and stuff. It's not it's just not something that's been in my consciousness, but I'm kind of growing more aware of that side of stuff as I get more involved in it as well. It's kind of expanding my bubble a bit, really, and just fitting in the time, I suppose, because I can't, when I'm working, when I'm writing, I can't listen to anything with lyrics or words in, because my background music's all soundtracks and that kind of stuff. So then it just comes to ever decreasing slices of your own leisure time. So between the Xbox, the TV, the films, the DVDs, the reading, some gaming, whatever else. So, if anyone wants to recommend some, obviously Bad Dice obviously is at the top of the list, but and the other ones I'm always happy to give them a listen.
Okay, we'll add
the last 5 blogs. There's a few. To be honest, there's quite a few book review blogs I kind of look at and stuff like that. The last one I looked at, because it's just that self-indulgent kind of looking for reviews of your own stuff.
Name.
Yeah, googling yourself, which just sounds wrong. I googled myself today.
Twice.
Another benefit from working from home. So I'm just trying to think of the Bad Science. A guy called Ben Goldacre, who sort of is all about exposing charlatans and nonsense of homeopathy and stuff like that. Who else? I can't remember.
Struggling on the blogs. The thing is, I read a lot of blogs.
I'll email you one or two.
My blogs all come into my reader, so I wouldn't even look at the title of the blog. I just the latest post, so it could be difficult.
Add one to that then. You mentioned Xbox. What are you playing on your Xbox?
Red Dead Redemption. Just finished Mexico. I'm going for 100% completion.
Everyone seems to be playing that other than me.
Yeah, I've not got on that one. I stopped playing the Xbox pretty much when I started doing this, because it's it's time.
Yeah, it's very time consuming. I was really in two minds. Actually, my Xbox broke for about 3 weeks, and I got so much done in terms of reading and other stuff like that. And I got it back, and Red Dead was just coming out, and other people, and I was like, no. I just finished, almost finished GTA 4, and I was just like, I've already done one of these huge, expansive environment games, and I was like, I'm not doing another one. And then everyone started telling me about it, and it's like, that just sounds really cool. And who doesn't want to be a cowboy?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I've got suckered into it. So there goes my life again. But after that, back to the summer and sitting in the garden and reading and doing cool stuff, hopefully. Until the next thing. Basically, the next thing I'm guaranteed to buy is going to be Call of Duty Special Ops. So that's not out until winter. So
I've got some time before that one.
Yeah. You want Assassin's Creed? That's what you want.
I've done it. Yeah, I've played Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed 2. So, but again, I got to a certain point where I went, I've done this. It's kind of new thing. I'm such a shiny toy syndrome. I'm terrible. It's like GTA. I've not finished it because I got bored trying to replay the final mission, and that's it. And once I kind of bang up against things a few times, I just can't be bothered. I have no staying power, except with writing, really, and even that I kind of wing it. So
fair enough. Okay, so the next question is, what's your guilty pleasure? But I think we've just found that out is with the Xbox.
Well, the googly. Oh no. No. My guilty pleasure is I'm a fan of pro wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing wrong with a bit of wrestling.
No, exactly. That's my thing. So I queued up for hours last year. You might have seen on the blog to get the autograph on Bret Hart's autobiography, and I regularly go to see live shows and stuff like that. And it's one of the things I watch on TV.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely,
I'm fucking for it. So who's your favourite? Come on.
Triple H.
Yeah, that's true. But who's in action at the moment? It's always either Chris Jericho or Edge for me.
Jericho's.
He's awesome.
You can never get on with Jericho's character.
I love him. He's fantastic.
It's like you're talking another language.
We were watching a house show at the arena the other day with my friends, and we just love. Adam Troke, actually, who's another wrestling fan, and we just love cheering for the bad guys because it just winds all the kids up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you ever seen Brock Lesnar?
No.
Because he fought the weekend in the UFC.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, we went to Manchester 4 or 5 years ago, and it's the first live one I'd been to, and Brock Lesnar came out, and good lord, he was huge.
Yeah, the big fellas.
Huge.
Yeah.
Could not believe it. Really couldn't.
It was. I did a show. It was Necro. It was the same show actually. There was a horror convention on at the same place, but actually I missed him. Actually, they had Roddy Piper actually as a guest star. But also there was a wrestler there. If I really looked it up, I'd probably work out he is. But he was like 6'10", and just the same sideways, and just it was one of those moments where I was standing next to him. I'm not exactly a big fella, but I'm not small either. And just going, I feel tiny, and going, now add on a few more inches and a bit more width-wise, and that's how intimidating a Space Marine is outside his power armor. All of this kind of, they're 8 foot, 9 foot. They don't have to be. Seriously, find a well-proportioned, built 7 foot guy, and look at his chest and just think, he could just batter me, and you don't, and then stick him in armor, and then you don't have to be, 8 foot, 7 foot, 7'5" is plenty.
Of course.
So yeah, no, wrestling's good fun. That's that's definitely something I always put time.
It's not just me.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so what's your biggest gaming regret? Whether it's working at Games Workshop, not doing something you wish you had, or doing something you wish you'd changed, or just when you've been playing a game or something, I don't know.
I wish I'd won more battle reports. Not letting Jake keep taking that bleeding grey wizard in all of those Warhammer battle reports when he kept beating me with Steed of Shadows and stuff. No, I don't really do regrets in that kind, I suppose. There's decisions you make when, in retrospect, you go, that was not the smart decision to make. And, there's at least one on every single project.
Yeah.
For personally, in terms of gaming, I suppose my biggest gaming regret, I think there was a tournament I was playing with my dwarfs, and it was a stone thrower, my own stone thrower, scattered onto my battle standard bearer Thane. Luckily, he'd only taken one wound from it. And then late in the battle, I decided to charge a unit of huntsmen, promptly fluffed everything, and then he got killed and the battle standard captured. So and I didn't really need to charge him for anything either. That was more of a, hey, I'm a dwarf, I can go, oh no, I'm dead. So,
I'm dead, crap.
And the one thing that annoyed me the most, there was when we were playtesting 5th edition. 5th edition, yeah. And there was a sort of a staff tournament organised to playtest it, and at the time, I ended up getting my dwarfs versus wood elves, and the scenario we were testing was breakthrough on that round
With your dwarves?
with my dwarfs versus wood elves.
It's never going to happen.
And luckily, he wasn't a very good wood elf player. He actually forgot one of his shooting phases one turn, and by successfully charging his war dancers and my iron breakers and me rolling double sixes for their pursuits twice, they were one move away from getting into his deployment zone, at which point my opponent, at the time there was very generic spells, and there was one called Net, which stopped him using, and he cast it on them and stopped them moving on my last turn. So that was probably my most... I was very polite at the time, but I could have throttled him. There's one time dwarves are ever going to get anywhere near...
Ever going to win a
completing that
breakthrough
scenario.
mission?
Yeah. And then suddenly he went, Net. And so, So...
Okay, and on the flip side of that?
Your proudest gaming achievement?
Actually, I quite like getting the sportsmanship award I mentioned earlier, actually, because that was voted for and everything. It wasn't just a fix. That was quite good. I would say, although I didn't appreciate it at the time, getting through to the semi-finals of the Studio Blood Bowl tournament and losing on a technicality due to outside interference. Could have gone all the way and won it. Or got
I
to
feel
the
there's a
finals.
story there.
There is, and there's one that involves lots of swearing. I got through. I had the Washington Deadskins, my undead team, before they crocked them and stopped them being totally awesome in campaigns. And I had it was a ghoul, and I was going to run for the winning touchdown against Simon Smith's Dwarves, and I failed my dodge roll, and I was going to roll again. And Simon hadn't said anything, and then somebody from the sidelines pointed out that dwarfs all have tackle, and that I didn't get my dodge reroll. And people have been niggling me all through the game, or one particular person who I won't mention, but and been winding me up, and I kind of exploded at that point because it was in overtime. It was
tense.
It was tense, yeah, and I was going to get through to the final, and it was basically how many people am I playing here, but with more expletives. And that was it, and then I lost them. Didn't go through the final.
I think we've all had a moment like that. Haven't we?
Well, yeah, I was such a bad loser. Actually, I didn't blame Simon, the guy I was playing. It was the crowd. They were against me, and then I did actually just tear up my roster and start. And I was like, and then started a Skaven team.
Nerd rage.
But it was one of my few moments of nerd rage. I have a few. Usually they're self-inflicted though. So.
Well, I think that's it. On that note.
on that note of nerd rage.
Yeah. So thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Quite a lot longer than you.
Here in
first.
lovely Nottingham.
Yeah. So Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, obviously we're sat here. You've been Games Workshop as long as we've been playing, and it's just like it's like meeting one of our gaming heroes. So thanks very much for coming down.
It's my pleasure. And yes, I'll not try and feel any older.
So thanks very much. Good luck with your new Crown of Blood series and all your Black Library stuff, and hopefully we might speak to you again soon.
Yes, good luck to you and all your listeners, and I hope they all go out and buy Shadow King or Path of the Warrior.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Unseen Lurker is a new, exciting gaming magazine covering gaming, tactics, hobby, modelling, reviews, interviews, and even the occasional zebra. Each issue has a quarter of the magazine available for download, so you can try before you buy. It's the first independent global magazine encompassing articles from generals and hobbyists all over the world. Every issue of Unseen Lurker, that's Lurker with an E, is packed with giveaways such as custom dice, t-shirts, as well as the Game of the Month as reviewed by our Unseen Lurker test dummies. For more information, check out unseenlurker.com. How awesome was that?
That was pretty damn good. I think I said maybe 6 words.
So, fanboy mode is fully engaged.
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't really know what to say. I'm still buzzing. So, yeah, thanks to Gav. I don't know if he'll listen back to this or not. Probably not. He's a busy man. But, yeah, that was just stunning for us. He says, oh, you've got me for about an hour. And he turned up a bit late, and I thought, oh, is this going to be into the time we've got him for? And then he's just sat and he's talked, and it's just been awesome. He's talked about whatever he wanted to ask. And I'm sure if we had more questions, he'd have stayed for longer.
I think also the clock in the room that we're in is obviously not on proper time, and it says 8 o'clock at the minute. It's actually 9 o'clock, and I'm not sure whether that kind of threw him a little bit, because I did catch him once or twice clocking it, but...
Yeah, so that was just brilliant. So yeah, thanks to Gav. I hope we did a good job of the interview.
I think okay, I don't know, but I think we did, because we just let him talk, and that's what they want to listen to.
Yep.
They listen to us every bloody week.
So feel free, if we made a hash of it, let us know over the feedback on the forums. We're going to start a thread about this episode. So it's baddice.co.uk/forum. Yeah, that's pretty much all we've got to say on that matter. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add?
No. See? Wrestling. Cool.
Yeah, well, I'm not so sure on that. But you two look like you're enjoying yourselves, so I thought I'll keep quiet for a minute. Something that keeps me quiet must be good, eh?
That was ace. That was
yeah. I mean, that brings home why it's a real shame that you don't hear from from the Games Workshop staff.
Well, we said that, didn't we? You know, a lot of people, I dare say, will download this because you don't get a chance to talk to people like that. And we were just saying, weren't we, as we were walking back from getting a drink, how many people would download an interview with John Blanche off the game? If Games Workshop got somebody to interview John Blanche or Jez Goodwin or anybody,
it'd be like hundreds of thousands.
It'd be more than that.
Yeah, well,
do you know what I mean? Would download it and would listen to every word that man has to say.
Yeah, and you just don't get to hear that sort of insights from the Games Workshop staff because, for whatever reason, they've got a policy of they don't talk to people.
Yeah, but if they did it if they did it in-house, I mean, again, they did the 40k one, didn't they, when they had Jervis talking about the new 40k?
Yeah.
No, I don't play 40k. I don't understand 40k. I haven't got a clue. I downloaded all 3 of them and listened to them.
Yeah, of course you did, because it's Jervis talking. You never get to hear it.
Yeah. But hey-ho. Hopefully they'll embrace the new media and they'll do it. Yeah,
I'd like to see it. Certainly, I'd love to get an hour of John Blanche's time or Rick Priestley or any of the any of the leading lights.
Well, we spent 20 minutes? 20 minutes with Rick Priestley, and he talked for 15 about car parks.
Yeah,
it was great.
It's just even the new guys starting out in the studio, they've got enough stories, as many good stories as the guys who've been there years.
Well, again, like what Gav said a minute ago, how quickly they move up and get bedded in. Do you know what I mean? They must have so much to say.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, well, I think that's it for this episode. We've already been going quite a while, so what we're going to do is we're going to sign off. This is episode 40, so we're moving thick and fast through these. The next few episodes are going to be weekly episodes, so we've got the ETC one coming up over the next couple of weeks. Keep an ear out for that. We do have a competition winner to announce for the for the what is it? The Unseen Lurker magazine. What I'm going to do, and I'm going to post the winner on our forums. So,
ooh, cheeky.
Yeah, cheeky. So if you want to know if you've won the Unseen Lurker magazine, you're going to have to check the forums on the competition threads in the general discussion section, and you'll be able to see if you've won it or not. And that was open to anyone who'd signed up for the Snake Eyes section over the last month. Is it 2 or 3 episodes?
Yeah.
So just check out on there. Okay, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a week.
Well, might see some of you at the weekend at Warhammer World.
Oh yeah, that is a good
8th
point.
edition.
Actually, talk about that.
Talk about what?
What we're doing the weekend.
We're going to Warhammer. We're going to Warhammer World
So
to play 8th edition.
yeah, so if you're at Warhammer World on Saturday or Sunday, come and find us. We'll be there, probably in our Bad Dice t-shirts, playing Warhammer 8th.
Yep.
So come and say hello.
I'll sign your rule book.
Okay, and so until next time, thanks for listening. The preceding podcast was brought to you by Ben and Ben Productions. If you actually enjoyed the show and feel the need to tell other people about it, you can leave a positive review on iTunes. You can contact both your hosts at thebens@baddice.co.uk, or you can contact us individually on Ben Curry at baddice.co.uk or Ben Johnson at baddice.co.uk. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Bad Dice Podcast.